Hello and welcome back to Blood and Ashes, a Wheel of Time spoiler cast. This is episode 7, and I'm joined as always by my good friends Jody.
Hello.
And Villy.
May the light illume you.
Yes, may it. This week we are covering chapters 36 through to the end of 41. But before we get into all of that action, let's have a quick walk down memory lane and address a couple callbacks from our previous recording. We were talking about the Dark Friends and how they're everywhere, and we've made an offhand comment that there's Dark Friends in the Children of the Light, and we started speaking about the man called Bors that we thought was a White Cloak that pops up in the prologue of The Great Hunt, and it turns out he is Jacob Carradine, who is a high-ranking Inquisitor with the Children of the Light, and he is the first White Cloak Dark Friend that we read about, even if we don't read about his real name. So we were spot on with that one. I also want to ask you guys if you've noticed, like I sometimes refer to the Maidens of the Spear as Shield Maidens, and I don't know if that ever happens in the books or if I'm just, absorbing that term from other media or video games or something.
I noticed that because I call them Maidens of the Spear, and I think it just got their own.
Like everyone does.
Okay.
I wonder, was there a special name given to the maidens that sort of act as Rand's honor guard? Like he, later in the books, he has like a group of them that stay with him all the time. I guess it remains to be seen. All we have to do is wait.
We'll get there.
2 or 3, 4 maybe years until we find out the answer to that one.
Just a couple of million words.
I will, just a couple more. I'll make a concerted effort to actually refer to them as Maidens of the Spear or Fardar as my, if I have to.
Yeah, there we go.
We spoke about, or we sort of speculated about what the wrappings on Rand's sword could mean, and we find out in this episode exactly what that means, so I won't blather on about that. And the last thing I wanted to say is what we got notified about from our friend of the show, Rowan, who wrote to me and said that we never mentioned it, but Elsie Grinwell, that sort of moons over Rand, she eventually goes to the White Tower. I read up about it a bit after Rowan told me, and she goes to the tower shortly after Matt and Rand pass through there. And what happens to her at the tower is she doesn't have an awful lot of talent, but she shirks all of her duties as a novice and spends all her time in the water training yard, ogling the waters, just like she did with Rand.
Totally in character.
It was fake.
And eventually she's chucked out. They chuck her out of the tower for neglecting her duties. But interestingly, at some point, Lanfear uses a guise of Elsie to actually deliver a message to Nynaeve and Elaine and a couple of the other characters. Like Matt, I think, also walks past her in the tower, and he sees Elsie, but it's Lanfear, which is an interesting little wrinkle, which is going to be cool to see when we get there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I had forgotten all about that.
Yeah, same, totally. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to mention from last week? I'm the only one that sort of obsesses over, all the things I've said and correcting myself. But is there anything you guys wanted to touch on?
About the sword wrappings, but that comes up in one of the chapters that I'm doing, because I've even written in my notes, Moritz was right with an exclamation mark. Like, wow.
Yes, I knew there was something there. Yeah. That's going to happen a lot. Just a tiny kernel of a thought from back in my high school days. Coming and presenting itself here.
Now that you've given me the opportunity to say something about this, I'm realizing that in my memories of reading this book, like stuff that I thought was happening in book 4 and maybe book 7, it's all happening in book 1. You know,
Yes.
Like, whoa, this happened already? Like, I'm amazed at the amount of information packed into book 1 that I thought was spread out. Like, it took ages to get there, but no, it's all here.
I'm also agog. Like, it is impressive how much of the story that I remember, which only makes me more excited about what's in the other books again. Like,
what have I forgotten? I was just going to say that. Like, how much are we have we forgotten? What's gone to the wayside?
I know the answer to that, and that is 99% of the story.
Yes. Out of the 4.9 million words, I probably remember 700 of them. So there's a lot to come.
Yes. Sure is. So on that note, should we get to some of those words?
Yep.
Lots of words to cover.
Yes, we better get cracking. Last week we ended up with Rand and Matt finally reaching Caemlyn after that reprehensible stretch of story.
Yes.
I am coming down hard on that stretch for comedic effect, but it was a slog. But the boys finally arrived in Caemlyn, and that takes us into chapter 36 called The Web of the Pattern. Take it away, Jody.
Web of the Pattern. Yeah. So previously on the last podcast, we left off with them arriving, as Moritz said, and having a chat there at the end to Basil. He's just Basil now. First name basis. And he was explaining the history of Tom and whatnot. So right after that, he does the little explanation. He gets them some food finally. So this is where we pick up in this chapter. Rand and Matt get some food, and they all sit down together. And this is where Rand kind of gives Basil the lowdown of what's happening. Of course, he omits the Trollocs and the Fades, and he leaves out some of the gory details because he doesn't know whether they can trust Basil as yet. Rightly so, everyone they've met in an inn up until this point has tried to murder them. So you can't just trust anyone.
No.
But yeah, we see again that Matt is getting worse and worse. The daggers affecting him more and more. He's really a downer. He's not a fun character in these chapters.
He's not in a good place.
No. Well, we know why. But anyway, so we get some more info as well about Elida. That she is formidable. Like Basil's explaining to them about, like keep your voices down, and it's better that you don't go and ask for help because Elida has a way of finding things out. And when I say she's formidable, that's true about all Aes Sedai, but specifically about her. And we also learn that she can sense things or see things, so she has this foretelling ability. Even Basil knows about it, and he brings it up. So it's common knowledge in the city, at least. Well, for important inn owners, I suppose, who know everything in the city. So yeah, he gets them a room in the attic. The serving girls, of course, are grinning at Rand, giving him the old bedroom eyes. Normally it would be Matt, but Matt's such a sour puss right now. No one looking at him. And yes. Rand, again, is thinking, this is the theme that's running along through all these chapters. Rand is thinking, man, he wishes Perrin was here, or he had Perrin's way with girls. And Perrin's on the other side of the world thinking, I wish he had Rand's way with girls. So yeah, they're both useless with girls. Very good at knocking crows out of the sky while flying with a rock in a sling, but can't talk to a girl. Yeah, so Matt's all moody in the room when they get up to the room, and Matt's like, no, he just falls on the bed, immediately curls up into a ball. I can just see him like giving, Rand the middle finger, like, just leave me alone, fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm staying down here. So Rand's like, we're in Caemlyn, so let's go do something. So anyway, he leaves Matt, goes downstairs. He's sitting in the common room, and one of the city guard walks in the door and is like eyeballing everyone, and Rand's trying to avert his eyes. He's realizing, okay, maybe this is not a good place to be sitting around. So he asks one of the serving girls, like, is there a private place for me? So she says, we have a library. So off he goes and finds some sanctuary in the library to kind of hide away because he just doesn't want to be in the same room as Matt. And he gets in that library, and there's just books everywhere. He said 300, 400 books, which to Rand is, he didn't even know there were so many books in the world, all leather bound, smelling of mahogany. And who else is in there? Yes, it's what is pronounced as loyal, but in my mind is always loyal. I was trying to give him a little, I don't know if that's a
little flair,
a little French flair. Well, is loyal. So Loyal's there, so we get to meet our first Ogier. I was like, sweet, it's an Ogier finally. And I remembered him. This is one of those things I was mentioning that I thought Loyal was introduced into the story way later, in my memories, obviously. But no, here he is, right in book 1, right in the beginning. So of course, when Rand first sees him, because he didn't notice him when he walks into the library, he's first looking at the books. Then he hears a creak behind him, turns around, and there's this giant, what he believes to be a Trolloc. So he freaks out, obviously. And it's not a Trolloc, it's a legend. And yeah, Loyal is just the man. We get to know him through this chapter, and he is just kind, and he is intelligent, and he's thoughtful, and he's just rad. I love this guy. So and
didn't Rand get such a fright that he drew his sword?
No, not that I can recall.
I don't think so.
I think he just got a big fright. But that is the theme amongst people, amongst humans in general, according to Loyal, is that when he came into the city, for example, I mean, he's hiding in the inn and inside the library, because when he arrived in the city, he was chased through the streets by mobs of people who thought he was a Trolloc trying to kill him. And he remained calm throughout that entire thing as well. He said he almost got upset, which, goes to a long way to explaining the mindset and the personalities of the Ogier. They're very slow. They're kind of like the Ents from because he was talking about he was talking about
humans are so rash, and I guess your lives are so short, so I shouldn't blame you for being so quick to excite.
Exactly. But one of the things he also said that reminded me of that was that while he was at the meeting at the stump, they called it, where the elders were meeting, they had only been meeting for a year, like only had a 1 year long meeting, so full on Ents. And they have this affinity for trees. They are the herders, the sheep, not sheep herders, the tree herders, basically. So they have a lot of, okay. But we're going to get a lot of that comparisons, as you said in the beginning.
Yeah.
So anyway, nobody remembers Ogiers. And there's a little thing as well, like he said, but yeah, it's their fault because they've, left humanity for a long, long time. And it's been 6 generations since the darkness fell on the ways. So that made me think, I was thinking maybe hundreds of years, but generations, whose generations? Because Ogier live a very long time. For example, Loyal is 90 years old and he's considered a child. So is he talking 6 generations of Ogier or 6 generations of humans? Because there would be a massive difference.
I think he meant Ogier. I don't know. I'm just assuming because he's the one that said it. And I think, in fact, doesn't Rand also go, hang on, only that many generations since the Age of Legends or the War of the Shadow or something like that?
The War of 100 Years.
And then he asks Loyal how old he is.
Yes.
That's what triggers Rand's interest in Loyal's age, is that mention of how many generations has passed. And he sort of does the quick math and he goes, wait, hang on, how old are you?
Yeah. So Rand is good at math too. Oh, whatever.
Well.
Right. So, yeah.
Lews Therin.
Lews Therin is good at math. Okay. So we find out as well that Loyal's he's on a journey. He's on a road trip by himself on his Ace. Cruising around, he's trying to find all the groves, and we find out more about them. And they wouldn't let him. The elders wouldn't let him leave the steading because he was so young. So he's snuck out. So he's on the lam. He's a wanted Ogier. And so he's cruising around and he's in there reading about the books and whatnot. So he's one, and then we learn a bit more about the Ogier as well, about the steadying, and after the breaking of the world, how they wandered and they roamed and they couldn't find the steadying again because all the continents had moved and shifted, so everything was in a different place. And then the longing came on them. So this is like a physical need to be inside the steadying. If they're not in a steadying, after a while, they die. That's it. So they're kind of confined to the steadings, and now they don't see humans as much anymore because they used to travel through the ways, and now the ways are tainted with the shadow. So it's understandable we never see these guys and why humans now think of them as monsters. So we learn about the groves as well. That was their work. Their destiny was tending these trees and these groves all over the world, which have now gone into ruin. Like in Ilion and Tyr, for example, they've completely destroyed them. Or in Ilion, for example, only the king is allowed to hunt. Those are his hunting grounds or whatever. Yeah. So most cities have changed. Like everything he's read about is changed. The world is completely changed. The cities have disappeared that he thought existed. The groves are gone. And the stonework that they've learned, like everybody goes on about Ogier-built cities. Yes. It's just an afterthought to them because there were no more groves. So they kind of like just tried stonework and became
I took the same note.
Yeah.
Yeah. This thing that they are just like incredibly good at. They were like, well, we just did that, on the side.
Yeah, it's kind of a hobby, really. Nothing more.
Yeah.
So also at this point is when Loyal mistakes Rand for an Aielman. And we get a lot of this in the coming up chapters. And it's happened in the past, obviously. But it comes up a few more times in these chapters. Because he quotes something from the Aiel. Because I don't know the exact quote, but it was spitting in sight blind as eye and baring teeth and running into the final fight and all these kind of things, And he stares at Rand expectantly, waiting for Rand to respond. And Rand's like, what do you want me to say? And he makes a mistake about comparing the groves to Aventosora. And Loyal's like, no, man, you know better than most people. And he's like, why me? Because you're an Aielman. He's like, I'm not an Aiel. Yes, you are. But anyway. So we find out that about Rand is clearly Aiel. to everyone
Yes.
around him, except,
Yes.
of course, to Rand. He's the only one oblivious. So, and also another thing is that Rand instinctively trusts him.
He
He
does.
tells him the whole right from the beginning. He just starts blabbing to Viren, I
Yes.
suppose. Just starts blabbing, and this is the first person he tells the whole story to, including the Fades and all the journey and the Aes Sedai and Lan and all the details are included. He tells him the actual truth. And when he's finished telling the story, Loyal's just like, to Viren. And he's like,
Yes.
And then explains that the previous ones were like Arthur Hawkwing and Luce Theron. These guys were Ta'Veren, and that Rand is in the center of it again. After listening to your story, it sounds like you are Ta'Veren, and that the pattern will weave everybody's lives around you. And we get this theme again later in other chapters, which I'm sure one of you guys are doing, that Rand is in the center of everything. So this is another bombshell for him as well. And that's kind of where we leave this chapter at the end there, that you're an Aiel and you're Ta'Veren and you're going to be important. Did I skip over anything there that you guys noticed?
No, he hadn't skipped over anything, but I just wanted to say that I felt Rand's relief at being able to tell the full story. Like when Rand tells Loyal the whole story, and including all the dirty bits about the Dark Friends and the Fades and the Trollocs and all that sort of stuff, I felt a weight being lifted off my shoulders. It just felt really good to just, maybe even accentuated by the fact that this last stretch of chapters were so dire, like just this cozy library with this giant Ogier sitting next to him, who obviously also represents some form of safety and protection, especially knowing, like, how Loyal goes down the story, down the track. But I just felt this immense relief that Rand could tell the story. It made me feel better.
Because you get this thing that, like, you could finally trust someone who's not going to try and murder him instantaneously.
But I mean, he has been with Matt the whole time, and Matt has been so negative and taken over by the dagger.
Yes,
and here's someone that finally says, "Now, look, your friends are well; they'll be okay. Like, we'll all be fine." Just like a positive conversation.
Yeah, it would be such a welcome change for him. I mean, Matt is accusing Basil Gill of being a dark friend. And he's going out of his way. Like, I also noticed that when Rand tells Basil that there are dark friends after them, Basil doesn't bat an eyelid. He's just like, okay, well, that's fine. Don't worry. There's no
the big
room
city,
for me. He is, but I also found that he is so loyal to Tom. Like, what I took away from that is that he is so, like, he's so not indebted, but loyal to Tom, that if Tom was trying to help these boys, he will go through to some pretty extraordinary lengths to help them as well, without really knowing them at all. Purely going on, if Tom vouches for them, I will do what I can, and he does a lot for them. I mean, he puts them up. The city is back to the rafters, and he finds a space for them to stay. He gives them food. He hides them. He will come to it later, but like, he's confronting white cloaks, and he's really stepping up to the plate, which is also just another spoonful of sugary relief on top of this.
But that seems to be his personality, because he's doing the same for Loyal.
Yes. True.
Yeah, he's
true.
He's a
good man.
He's a good guy.
He's a good man,
and he tries to help where he can.
Well, you can see it by the patronage of his inn as well. Everyone in their red supporting the queen. It's
all good queensmen.
All good queensmen.
Exactly.
He also seems to have means of gathering information. He has informants. Like, he's got people around the city that sort of feed him information, which is also heartening for a reader. Like, oh, okay, cool. This is not just some idiot that's trying to help them. This is a person of some influence and means.
Yeah, like I said earlier, he knows about Elida, and he knows about her ability, the foretelling and stuff. Is that just common knowledge of the city, or for him specifically? And if he's such good buddies with Tom, and Tom had such influence in the court at one point, what is the history between Basil and Tom? Do we find out later in the books? Because I don't remember.
I can't remember. I mean, Basil comes back into the story in a fairly significant way later, when him and Lamgwin and Linny and Morghese are all traveling, together, and he sort of like helps them escape, I think, out of the city, or he sort of he ends up helping the queen directly, which must be an absolute dream come true for him.
For sure.
Because he is a queen's man to the core.
Good man. Basil.
Yeah. What else? I took note of the fact that Rand is such a well-mannered boy. He when Loyal greets him and he says something along the lines of your name sings in my ears. Rand's first thought is to copy him and to say that back to him as well. We see that later as well when Rand's like meeting royalty and stuff. He immediately takes note of what everyone else is doing and he does the same thing. Just what a good dude, good old Rand.
Indeed. Oh, there was one point that I forgot to mention when he's talking to Loyal about the pattern and to Viren and how the pattern, will allow for small changes but not for big ones if you want to change your destiny. And Rand gives the example, like, for example, if I wanted to not live on the farm in Emmons Field, but I wanted to live in the town, the pattern would allow that. But if I wanted to become a king, yes, the king of the world, perhaps.
Yes. Little do you know, the pattern is trying its damnedest to force you in exactly that direction.
Yeah, little things like that. So rereads are fun.
Oh, so good. Oh man, the additional context is just so juicy. I love it.
So glad we're doing this. So glad.
I also noticed that when Loyal, he says to Rand, "Okay, cool. Listen to your story. I want to travel with you." And Rand just says, "Look, mate, this is not going to work. It's too dangerous. I don't want to endanger someone else." But in hindsight, that would have been such a snap decision for an Ogier. He sat there for 10 minutes or so listening to Rand's story and then went, "Okay, cool. I'm going to travel with you now."
Yeah, he is young and impulsive.
Yes, clearly. Yeah, I wonder what Elder Haman would have said of his decision in that moment.
Nothing
Typical
good,
decision of someone that's 10 years too young to sit at the stump.
Yes. It's only 90, child. Anything else, Vil?
No, I think we got that one under the belt.
Rightio. Well, now it's your time to shine, Villy. Chapter 37 is The Long Chase.
Ooh, it's coming to the end of the long chase, I think. We've got Lan, Moiraine, and Nynaeve. And we gather in the chapter. It's dark, and Moiraine and Lan are having a chat. And Nynaeve's trying to hear. She's very inquisitive around everything. And Lan just kind of stuck the reins of Mandar in her hand and walked off. And the only reason why the horse wasn't biting her, she's still so scared of that horse. But she's then having a little thought there with Aldib, who kind of gets her head under her hand, sort of, "Oh, well, since you're here, just you might give me a rub," and having to remind herself that, okay, cool, let me not take out my frustration on the horse of the woman that's frustrating me. You're a good horse, any which way. But they return and say, "No, look, they one of the boys have lost his token. The boy has lost his token." But they're close enough to feel him, or Moiraine at least, and they are going to spend the night there. And it's uneasy feeling. She's now worried, and they eventually set up a little camp and try and get some sleep before they set out for this final move to try and find the boy. And during the night, sort of, Nynaeve struggles to fall asleep and sort of plagued by this thought. And then she sort of, Moiraine was sitting with the eye closed, sort of tell her, like, it's going to be okay. He got it back. Sort of, no, you got the token back, so it's all going to be okay. And she then falls asleep and like, phew, okay. But during that period, you still get that all the time, her trying to impress Lan. And every time there's something that's sort of dismissive that come out of his, like, "I told you to keep the horses quiet." And she's kind of like taken by that.
Yeah.
It's actually quite funny. And then she falls asleep and wakes up to a tight grip on her arm and sort of goes for a knife, and it's Lan that sort of blocks her from grabbing the knife. It's like, no, it's time to go. And again,
Lan
she's
gets
pissed off
that a lot.
and she's pissed off.
Coming at him.
I thought it's not, "Oh, phew, it's Lan." It's like, I can't believe he was able to sneak up on me while I was sleeping. And they're like, "No, look, this is time." He takes her up. They sort of come up to a reach, and she notices Moraine's already there in a dark cloak. She almost didn't see her. It's like, all right, and sort of get down on their bellies and crawl to see over the reach. And they see, obviously, the white cloaks being encampment down at the bottom. And they're like, "Look, this is go time now. We're going to go down, and we need you to sneak in. And if you're any good as you say you are, like, you should be able to handle this one. And you're going to go to the picket lines of the horses and sort of just cut halfway through them, just enough to hold them, for the distraction, and they should be able to break free, and that would set them off on the horses. And she's like, okay, this is getting real now. I mean, I'm going to sneak into a camp of guards and do some real business here. And then thinking at the same time, was just, oh yeah, Lan is also just casually dropping in. Oh yeah, by the way, I saw 2 wolves, but it should
Yes.
be okay because they wanted me to see them. And she's like, great, let's bring wolves into the story as well in the dark. Yeah, and he's like, no, look, usually they run away from men, so should be fine. And it's like they wanted me to see them. So it's an interesting one, which sort of raised the question: did the wolves know that they are going to be doing what they were doing? Was it a thought already in there that they could smell, that they smelled right?
I think they suspected the way that the guys were acting around the camp, but Nynaeve also uses that opportunity to chirp Lan and go, "Oh, the wolves stay away from people, do they? I would never have learned that growing up around sheep farmers and blah blah blah." And she just sort of has a little chuckle to herself, like, "Ha, I got one over him."
Oh yeah, so well, she sets off and sort of goes at full pace, and only then realizing and happy that Lan couldn't see that she's starting to blush now because she was making noise. And then she slowed down and crawled down. She got closer, and eventually she could smell the horses, and she knew it was there. But then it got real, sort of the guards walking up and saying, what was they saying there? The light illume you, everything's safe, kind of walking off in the other distance. She's panicked but ready, pulls out a knife, cuts the first picket fence, the first 5 horses, the line, moves on to the other one, manages to cut her finger, sort of yelping a little bit, but carries on. And then, to my great happiness, she recognizes one of the shaggy smaller horses, and she's like, oh yeah, Bella's back. And she decides,
Hashtag Bella's back.
Hashtag bigger. It's and now at that moment she also realizes, wait a minute, it's not just one of the boys, because if Bella's there, Egwene's got to be there, which means they're going to have 2 people on 2 of the horses trying to get away. That's just not going to happen. So you use a bit of intuition, and she decides, all right, I'm going to grab 2 horses, grabs Bella by the one hand, and gets the reins of another horse. And that's when Moiraine decides, let's lose the thunder. And it just all hell breaks loose. We've got lightning, we've got the earth shaking, and of course the horses rear and bolt, but her holding on to the 2 reins in 2 different hands. Bella goes the one direction and the other horse goes the other direction, and literally lifts her off the feet. And almost, I envision her almost dislocating her shoulder sockets, being lifted up, and she's like absolutely injured by this. But nevertheless, she doesn't let go. She gets up, she sort of pulls herself up onto Bella, and let loose. Let's go. We got to get out of here. The children at that time are running in all directions, and as this happens, the wolves step in as well. So it's just all hell has broken loose over there. And that's pretty much the chapter. There's not much else that was happening. The lightning shattered, everything was going crazy. She got, and then she realizes about the wolves, and we move on to the next chapter. So it's actually quite a short chapter.
It's action packed. I liked Nynaeve's competence. Like, it wasn't part of the plan for her to get 2 horses, but she sees the issue. She thinks of the future. She makes a plan. She adjusts. She adapts. There's that competence that's in all the Emmons Fielders that we've talked about before.
They know how to handle themselves.
Yeah, that's real sharp.
Tavirin.
Let me ask you guys this. What did Moiraine sense on the road to Caemlyn before they turned north to go after Perrin? Because she looks down the road, and it's described almost as if she can see the length of the road, and she sort of stares down the road. I think she even stands up in her saddle. And then she mutters something about, okay, well, I just have to do something about the thing I can do something about. And then they turn north to go to Perrin. So she sensed something of Rand and Mat.
I think she was, the thing was, she wasn't sensing something, she was sensing the lack of something. Like, she was going in that direction and going, trying to find a trail, a scent, something, and eventually just went like, listen, there's nothing.
We find the boy that we can find for sure.
Yeah,
right.
So
okay.
Let's just turn north then.
Yeah. I like the fact that when Nynaeve goes up and Lan sort of takes her to where Moiraine is sitting, looking down on the encampment, and they're sort of like hatching their plan. Um, Lan mentions that he's been down there close enough to notice that the boy is under guard. So Lan was like,
Yeah.
he's already been in their camp and back.
Why he could have done it himself?
And then, Nynaeve says to him, so why don't you just go get him? And he's like, well, I could, but I don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in, and I'm not going to be able to carry him out. So we all need to do this other thing. So like he'd already considered, well, I can just go in and get him. And then, okay, well, I'll go in, I'll scout a bit, and I'll come back. It's like he can come and go as he wants.
Yeah.
And when he asks Nynaeve to go create the diversion, he says to her, if you are half as good as I think you are, the White Cloaks will never see you. And I was like, yes, compliment her, Lan.
She's twice as good as you think you are.
Yes. I just I felt good for Nynaeve when he complimented her like that.
Now that was there's constantly in these chapters with the three of them that sort of tension. I don't want to use sexual tension, but sort of adoration or.
Yeah, it's that like I was when you guys made fun of me for quoting the mechanisms of romantic comedies, but like it's that in the beginning they stick, like they sort of at each other's throats, and all that means is that later they are going to get together. But I mean, I never picked up on the stuff, the romantic connection when I read it the first time. I certainly, I mean, you'd be blind not to notice the sort of the interplay between them and the sort of competition almost. But knowing that they eventually get married, you read all this stuff in a much different light.
Yeah. No, look, when you read it for the first time, you're in it for different reasons. You're expecting, you're reading fantasy, so you're looking for magic, you're looking for battles. Like these are the things that stick out to you. Action. And then, after 4.9 million words, how much of it can you really remember? Especially after like 10 years of reading it.
Yes.
So,
yes.
The answer is almost nothing. That's what you remember.
Well, granted, we were also just in much different life stages. Like, we weren't in tune with these little hidden things. It's where's the swords? Where's the blood?
Yes.
I hadn't watched 30 years of romantic comedies yet.
No. Yeah. So people, if you're listening to this and you have no idea what we're talking about, go watch 30 years of romantic comedies and then come back to this podcast and everything will make sense.
Also, reread the books, listen to the podcast, and then this all click. I also like that Moiraine, when Nynaeve is about to go down, she grabs her arm and she says to her, I won't risk you. Wisdom, like she sort of makes it clear. She says, you're part of the pattern now. And also just that little bit of relief of tension where Moiraine is showing some kind of, not affection, but some kind of value that she adds to Nynaeve is refreshing, because they are so at odds all the time. More Nynaeve against Moiraine, but Moiraine doesn't really give away much, and the fact that she is invested in Nynaeve makes me feel good.
I don't think that up to this point we've even seen a point of view chapter from Moiraine.
I think you hardly do throughout the series.
That's the thing as well. Yeah, you don't get to see her inner monologue, her emotions, her thought patterns. So we're judging her very harshly. She's not giving information. She's very rude. She's very standoffish. But she's doing a huge fucking job. She's on her own. I mean, she's got Lan, obviously. But the tower, like she left the tower, as well as I recall, kind of like in a Loyal situation, She doesn't have the full support of the White Tower to go and look for Dragon Reborn. So she's taking on a massive burden, and she's doing all right.
She pretty much saves the world.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she goes and finds the boys. She saves their bacon time and time again. She equips them with the skills that they need to survive. She spends a very long time, up until the point that she, again, literally saves their lives by tackling one of the Forsaken through the gateway that eventually sends her to, it's like that archway, it sends her to the
twisted doorway,
the Aelfin and the Eilfin. I mean, she time and time again pulls them out of the fire, And for a long time, she is actually trying to teach Rand how to cope with the responsibility of what it
Yeah.
is that's going to be coming his way. She is the unspoken hero of the entire story. And I mean, you do get more insight into sort of her inner monologue and motivations in New Spring, which is
Mm.
really cool.
Oh, there's her point of view. There you go.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I mean, her objective is clear. This all of them, and they weaved into the pattern. But her bigger
Mm.
objective is saving the world. Like they are
Yes.
pawns in
Yes.
this, and she has to utilize all of them. But she knows what the end game is.
Totally.
Very pragmatic.
I mean, she like what was the line she said? I would rather kill you myself than let the Dark One have you as well. You know, like it's
Yeah.
there's she is almost Machiavellian in her her attempts to make sure that the dragon reaches the final battle.
Well, look, that's the only way to save the world. It's like the only way it's doing is if you get to this point in time and defeat the Dark One. Otherwise, everything is fucked forever.
Yes.
So
Yes.
stakes are high, I imagine.
She's got motivation.
Yeah. Until Cadswain, of course, pops into the picture later on and takes over.
Mm.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, love her too.
Eh.
I've got a note here just saying the White Cloak guards are dumb as shit.
I was thinking the same thing. They're more interested what Billy was saying. They got that saying when they're marching back towards each other. Every time they see each other, they say, walk in the light, blah, blah, blah. It's like they're more concerned with the formality than actually guarding. And because Nynaeve is lying a few meters away from them.
Yes.
Like she's right there.
Yeah, 10 paces away from them.
Like
fucking White Cloaks.
useless.
They have zero redeeming qualities.
The stormtroopers.
You recall that old Disney Robin Hood cartoon we used to watch as kids?
The fox one.
Yeah, the fox one. And it's like the one guard sort of blowing the trumpet. It's 2 a.m. in the morning and all's well.
Thanks, buddy.
Talking about Robin Hood, men in tights. This is another analogy where they have the blind guy in the tower. He's the what? He's the lookout, and he goes,
Yes.
"I guess everything's okay." He was a white cloak.
Amazing. I also, just to speak to the Lan and Nynaeve dynamic again, when she cut 4 of the lines, she was about to turn back, and then she imagined what Lan's reaction would be to her cutting 4 of the 5 lines. And so she pushes on and she goes to the 5th one, and that's when she finds Bella.
Ah, yes. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Are we moving on?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, that's pure chaos at the end of that chapter, and we continue with that chaos in chapter 38 called Rescue.
Yeah.
So Perrin and Egwene lying on the ground, tied up. Perrin can't sleep. Egwene sort of nestled up to him to just get a bit of body heat, and he says she's sleeping the sleep of like someone that is just dead tired. He's thinking about how the White Cloaks are making them walk while still like, you know, in restraints, and how he feels like if they had to fall over, the White Cloaks wouldn't stop. So it's literally like he has to look at the ground the whole time because a fall could mean the end of his life.
Yeah.
It's just painting this picture of being like, oh man, just like total slave transportation, you know. And while they're lying there, Child Byar comes around, you know, still carrying Perrin's axe around. Seems like he's appropriated it for himself. And I think he gives Perrin a kick, as is his wont. And he's like, wake up. And Perrin, I'm awake. Jesus. Yanking them around, like he drags Perrin along the ground by the bindings and stuff, you know, to make sure that they're tied up. And he's about to go to Egwene to do it. And Perrin realizes he needs to wake Egwene up before Byard notices that she's asleep, because he's just going to kick the shit out of her as well. And he's like saying, Egwene, wake up. And she does, and Byard does the same thing. And then Child Byard sort of sits down on his haunches near Perrin, and he goes, you know, we are trying to set quite a fast pace to get to Caemlyn, because there's an event happening there that we cannot miss, that he doesn't elaborate on, but it's obviously the the parading of Logain through the streets.
Mm-hmm.
I assume, actually, I'm saying obviously, but it's an assumption on my part. And then he also says, but what is it? The Council of the Anointed is their sort of like board of directors in Amador. They are aware of the condition or the the skill or the magic that Perrin has where he can commune with wolves, and they are interested in learning more about it. So they want the Lord Captain Bornhold to take Perrin back to Amador, so that they can interrogate him before executing him.
Yeah.
So they sort of have this conundrum where they're trying to move quickly to get to Caemlyn. The wolves and Elias took care of a lot of their spare horses, so they're moving slower than they would like. And these two are holding them back. Now, when I was reading this, I was thinking, put them on a horse,
Yeah.
instead of just tying their legs together and making them walk. But anyway, so he sort of suggests that if the children didn't have to worry about these two, they would get to Caemlyn on time, and they also can't break their own duty to bring Perrin to Amador alive, but he's willing to sort of blur the lines and suggests that maybe they could, if they had to escape, then the White Cloaks would be free of the burden of trying to, keep them alive and reaching Caemlyn at the same time. To the point where he lobs a little stone onto the ground that Perrin notices has a sharpened edge, ostensibly for Perrin to use to cut his bonds and run away. Now, Perrin, in true Perrin style, does not bite. He needs to consider this. What is actually going on here? What is Bayar actually trying to achieve here? Because if I had to escape and they killed me, they'd be killing an escaping prisoner and their problem would also be solved. And he already knows that Bayar, at least, and probably all the other White Cloaks already hate him. He killed 2 White Cloaks. The chances are good that he's not going to get out of this little scuffle unharmed. But when Bayar finishes up the conversation, he sort of says, this is obviously just idle speculation, but your guards, they also speculate. Which is a pretty clear indication that is exactly what he wants Perrin to do. Perrin gets a sending from the wolves that just says, help comes. And then Bayar sort of notices, okay, cool, you've had some kind of thought, Perrin of the Two Rivers, I will know what it is. And then Perrin sort of is worried, like, oh shit, if he senses something is up, he might just kill me anyway, and then cut the bonds afterwards and say that we had cut the bonds and that, we were trying to escape and they killed an escaping prisoner. But it's at that moment where Perrin notices he sees in Bornald's eyes, death decided. He sees when he sort of has this realization, Bornald is like, oh, what's going on? And then he looks him in the eyes and he thinks, okay, Bornald has decided, Child Bayar has decided that he is going to kill us. And it's at that moment where it seems like the knight moves to swallow up one of the guards, like
it's
he just
Batman.
disappears. Yoink, he's gone. Now there's only one guard. And before the other guard can make a sound, the knight sort of envelops him and he just crumples to the ground. And Bayar obviously sort of senses this and picks up Perrin's axe and spins around. Let me just get the words here. It's like the knight had come alive to take them all, and then Bayar's axe lashes out like lightning. He spins it so fast it actually hums.
Yeah.
And he's swinging it at whatever is coming, and it's Lan. And it describes Lan as just casually leaning aside as the axe like skims past his face. Yes, just fucking fantasy ninja.
Yeah.
And he does a couple of attacks with his hand and his feet. Like Robert Jordan doesn't elaborate what it is, but I wish he'd like crushed his windpipe or something like that, just something especially malicious. But the end result is basically just Bayar falling to the ground, and then Lan is there and he cuts their bonds with his knife, and he says to them, okay, cool, like it's time to get out of here, but grab their cloaks and put them on. So they grab a couple of the cloaks off Bayar and of the guard, and Perrin and Egwene put them on, and they're sort of just waiting there, and Perrin's like, okay, we need to get out of there, but Lan is sort of biding his time. And it turns out because he's waiting for the distraction that Moiraine and Nynaeve are working on. And that's when the lightning crashes and it starts like chaos erupts in camp. But in that chaos, they are able to jump up and sort of scoot out of the campsite. A couple of people sort of shout things at them, but they just ignore them and they keep going. And they run out with very little resistance, really, because camp is in total chaos. But when they get to where Moiraine is, Nynaeve's not there. And Lan, in that moment, immediately turns around to go back to the camp. And Moiraine is like, Lan, no, there's no time for that. And then she has to, like, she names him by all those titles of his, and would you forget your oath and all that sort of stuff.
Lord of the Seven Towers
and he has like 10 of them. Okay, that's hyperbole, but he has a lot.
Yes.
But she really has to like stop him, which is, I think, the first time that you see Lan sort of acting in a way that is not condoned or supported by Moiraine. Like he is very close to just directly disobeying her for Nynaeve, which is noteworthy.
Well, he is a king.
Yes, he is. But then she bursts out of the trees with 2 horses, and like, oh, this wasn't the plan, but I guess it's good. So they ride off, and they basically just ride off into the night. No one seems to be following them. They ride for a while until they eventually get to a spot where they can just relax for a minute and make a fire and actually camp out for the night. And that's where they eventually bury the white cloaks. Perrin sort of convinced that he somehow ended up with Child Bayar's cloak, visibly, or not visibly, but obviously affected by this hatred that this person had felt to him, because Perrin would never have felt that before, and really, really took it to heart. So they ask about Rand and Mat, and Moiraine says that they are elsewhere. That's basically all she says. And Egwene swears like a really hectic oath that sort of makes Perrin blush. And then I think Perrin sort of goes aside and he gets a sending from Dapple saying, one day again.
Yeah.
And that's basically all that he gets. And that just immediately made me go, no, not one day, this day. Just travel with them, just like on the fringes. Just come with. We can always use a couple of wolves. So Egwene asks again where Rand and Mat are after they stopped, and Moiraine just says that they're either in or traveling to Caemlyn. So that's already positive news for them. And she gives Egwene an ointment for the welts on her wrists and things, and she comes over to Perrin and she says, look, I heard that they took an especial disliking to you, so can you take off your shirt? And when he does, it's like he is basically one big bruise. He's just got bruises everywhere. But it's only, and this is the quote from the book, thick slabs of muscle that prevented him from actually breaking a bone. So they don't often, they do sometimes, and especially initially when they introduce Perrin, talk about like how physically Dak he is. But it's good to be reminded, like he's a beefy boy, and he took a lot of damage. He took a lot of damage from those white cloaks, but he managed to absorb it. You don't like beefy boy?
No, I'm averse to beefy boys.
Note to self: continually use beefy boy. So Nynaeve has a big reaction to seeing all these bruises and everything, obviously, and she couldn't understand why they would dislike him that much. Perrin doesn't admit to killing the White Cloaks, which obviously would have painted a clearer picture for her as to why they hated him so much. This is something that he carries with him in silence for quite some time, if not forever. And she rubs ointment on him, Nynaeve, and as she's rubbing it on him, his bruises start going away. So she is channeling then and there. Totally channeling. And Perrin immediately feels like way, 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 way better. But she also then in that time notices his eyes. And then Moiraine comes over and she's like, oh, shit, yeah.
Her exact words. Oh, shit, yeah.
Oh, shit, yeah. No, but I think she tries to take him by the face and he feels his skin prickling or something. So she's obviously trying to delve or do something with the power to see what's going on. And he just pulls away. She sort of doesn't delve into what the thing actually is, but Perrin gathers from what she says that she thinks it's actually something from the Dark One as well,
Yeah.
which is disappointing for us, knowing that it's such a great and rad thing that Perrin has forever. For someone that we hold as high regard as we do Moiraine, to think that, well, this is also something from the Dark One, but it's probably just because it's not of the one power that she is skeptical of it. So so then Perrin sort of, he goes over to Lan after the women are done fussing over him, and he goes over to Lan and he sits down in front of him, and the two of them kind of just stare at each other for a while. And Lan then asks him, "Did you have a guide, or did the wolves just come to you, or like how did this come about?" And Perrin says, "No, I had a guide. There was a man, Elias Makira," and Lan recognizes the name, and he says that he learned a lot from Elias about the blight and about this, and he touches his sword. So it's just like Lan, this unstoppable killing force, acknowledging that, yep, Elias taught him a lot about a lot, which is cool to know. And for Elias to teach Lan about the blight, who grew up in the blight, so like Elias, he's just very well equipped to deal with anything offensive from the blight, or from the shadow spawn.
I mean, that's the pattern, weaving these people into these kids' lives to guide them and prepare them for what's coming. I mean, Elias, who taught Lan. You think Lan is the ultimate, but he's not. He had a teacher at some point. It was this guy that you by chance met in the forest.
And he finds these kids in the middle of nowhere, off the road. It's amazing. So Lan also elaborates a bit about the Ajahs, because Perrin mentions the Red Ajah specifically, because I think Elias did as well, because I think the Reds tried to gentle or do something similar to what they do to men that can channel with Elias, and that's what sort of caused the trouble with Elias, and that's why he sort of ran away. And we know from Elias that he's killed warders to do so. To nasty escape, business. He had to kill. Yeah, nasty business, killing warders offhandedly. And so Lan gives us a bit of insight about the different factions in the White Tower. Like, he talks about how the end goal might be the same, but the means by which to reach that goal differs wildly between these factions. And then Perrin just asks him straight up, "Lan, do you think this wolf thing is a thing of the Dark One?" And then Lan says he thinks that it's not. Lan just says that it's he doesn't think it's a thing of the Dark One, but he says this is the end of an age. In our lifetimes, we could see the end of one age and the beginning of a new one, and things are changing. Shit's happening. Things are changing across the board. You can see that everything is ratcheting up to 11 now, and the final battle is well and truly on its way. And then I've got, with an exclamation mark, then he grins. Like, Lan actually has a grin on his face, and he says to Perrin, "But that's not for us to worry about. Hey, blacksmith, we'll basically die fighting. We'll go clawing and screaming into the end, and that's not for us to worry about." And he sort of laughs it off. And that was just such a cool break in Lan's stoic nature. And sort of heartwarming for him to do that with Perrin, who does sort of feel completely alone and alienated now, more so than ever, with this wolf thing that's come over him. That Lan would be so friendly to him, because Lan has been quite harsh to the boys, continuously calling them blacksmith and sheepherder, but in a very derogatory way. Where here it's almost chummy, like he's, "Don't worry, that's not for us to worry about, is it, blacksmith? We'll fight until the end," and just sort of laughs it off.
That's his respect for the boys growing. You spend some time with these kids and you see that, look, and also like the yellow eyes. I think Lan is now seeing, like, oh shit, there's more to this blacksmith than just some wool-headed sheepherder.
If you look at the way he took a beating, I mean, no normal man could take a beating like that and not have broken bones. I mean, that would in itself give a level of respect, and like, all right, no,
for sure.
You're not this little sheepherder blacksmith anymore. You've felt the real world around you, which is also interesting. When the Nynaeve took out her ointments, they made a statement around that sometimes her ointments work really quickly and fast, and sometimes they take longer, but they always worked. So
Yes.
it's the sense that she's been doing this healing maybe for a long time, sort of in and amongst the wisdom herbs and all of that.
Mm. So yeah, it works faster when she's channeling as well as rubbing ointments on you at the
Yes.
same time.
I mean, I was shocked when I read this time. When I read her putting the ointment on him and like it visibly changing the bruising and making the bruising go away while she does. I was like, oh, cool, okay, great.
What an awesome ointment! Yes,
Yeah, always do this. Do this now.
for sure. Throw away all your other ointments. This is the one. There was something that you mentioned as well. Like, I don't know if this is the way you're explaining it or the way I understood it. When Child Buyer is telling Perrin that he should, he could escape and then he wouldn't be such a burden. And he's
Mhm.
like he's totally wants to kill him, but he's looking for a way
Yes.
to kill him. It's not okay. All right. Just don't want to for the listeners to clear that up. Like from my perspective,
Yes.
at least, he totally wants him to escape so he can kill him. That's all. Because he knows if he
Yes.
kills him without provocation, he's going to get into shit. So
Yes.
please escape. Please. I'm begging you.
Yes.
So I can kill
Yeah.
you. And then the thought I remember distinctly of that passes through Perrin's mind when his eyes flash like that is, "We come, brother." And well, I had to swallow there because it gets a lump in my throat. That is
Yes.
fucking awesome. Like he's already brother and
Yes.
we come, brother. Like
Yeah, the wolves are
hang
invested,
on.
eh? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, they've
totally.
come so far already.
I suppose they don't come across humans who they can chat to like this on a regular basis. So
No, and once they do, they are one of the pack.
yeah, brothers. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
very, very cool. I love that. And also, this brings me to another question. I always remember the only combat skills that I remember from this book are swords, sword fighting, the forms, leaf on the wind, all of those different things. But is Lan a ninja? Because I mean, you said it as
Pretty
well.
much.
Like they don't. Jordan doesn't explain more about the hand-to-hand combat. He just like hands and feet. But is he fucking throwing high head kicks, and
I bet.
ninja punches and shit? Like, is he? Do they train the warders as like ninjas? It's like,
The swords certainly sound katana-ish.
yes.
Even if the hilt is slightly different, they definitely are slightly curved blades with a sharp
Yes.
edge and a non-sharp edge. So I think the swords and the sword fighting obviously would be very similar to samurai style fighting. Also on is it the cover of the Eye of the World? With the picture of them sort of riding, Lan and Moiraine up front. Lan is also wearing a helmet that looks very samurai.
Yes, but even his features, the people from Saldea, from the north at least, they have the slanted eyes like that.
Melchior, please.
I'm saying Melchior, yes, of course, but also the people from the borderlands, the northern countries have
with their
this
top
kind
knots.
of Asian vibe to them.
Yes, definitely.
Which also brings me to talking about different races. The Aiel men, Rand is particularly red-headed with light eyes and light skin. This doesn't seem fitting for people who live in the fucking desert.
No,
maybe
but
they
they're not
should
from
be
the desert.
okay. Well, they've been there long enough. They should have adapted. But anyway, we'll get to that. So
Yeah, they just look like red-headed Irish people with a tan.
in the desert, that's terrible. That's the worst people to put in a desert. They're constantly getting sunburned.
In Caemlyn, when Rand is in front of Elida, she also pulls up his sleeve and like takes note of his like fair skin where the sun hadn't touched him.
Well, maybe that's why the Aiel are constantly wrapped up from head to toe, with even their faces covered and everything. It's not for dramatic effect. It's because they'll get the shit burned out of them if they
don't. Yeah, rescue. Anything else out of that one?
No, just how awesome that is. I love the planning. I love that Nynaeve played her role.
So good.
That the lightning strikes, the horses break. We come, brother. Just everything about that is rad.
Oh, and that Egwene and Perrin are back with allies.
And out of the hands of those bastards. It's
just the worst.
Fearing that they would not have survived that walk at all.
No, I mean, they were about to die. Child Buyer was about to kill him. That was the end, right then and there. Thank God they got to him on that night. Not tomorrow night. It would have been too late.
To Perrin.
Yes.
So we're ready to move on?
Sure.
Okay, Joseph, why don't you take us through chapter 39, Weaving of the Web?
Yes, more weaving of webs. So we pick up with the boys now. We're back with Rand. I say the boys. By now you should know the boys. When I say the boys, it's Rand and Matt. And it's Rex Manning Day. Oh, sorry. It's actually False Dragon Day. So Rand is super excited. Say no more, more and more. It's False Dragon Day. So everyone is stoked. The city's in a fury of just awesomeness. Everyone wants to go see the false dragon. Rand is in his room looking out the window. He's there up in the attic, so he's looking out over the city. He's trying to get Matt all stoked, like, "Hey, dude, it's False Dragon Day. Let's go check out Loghain." I almost said Rex Manning again. Totally taking that joke too far. Then, but Matt is just now he's in the pits. He's really just the worst. And he even says something like, "Just go by yourself. Go with your Trolloc friend." Like, and he's like, "Oh, you dumbass! He's not a Trolloc. He's an Ogier." Like Matt's just being a dick now. So yeah, curled up in a ball, grabbing his dagger on the bed, and he's just like, he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't want to go. So Rand's like, "Well, fuck you, I'm going by myself then." So off he goes. When he gets downstairs, he bumps into Basil. Basil says to him, "Hey, look, man, news on the street is that there is somebody in the city looking for you, and he's looking for 3 boys, and he's calling you by your names, like he knows who you are. He's some beggar, nobody knows who he is. Of course, it's Fain, as we all, well, I suspect at this point it's our good old chum Padan, the cunt Fain." And it makes me wonder if he is already merged with Mordeth at this point. Or does that happen later? Because
no, I think at this stage he's still just the Dark One's hound. Remember, there's a whole phase where he's the hound of the Dark One, and he's sort of being compelled by the shadow the whole time. It's just the end, the natural end of his Dark Friend phase.
Yeah.
I think you find out more about it later, but I don't think he's quite there yet.
No, okay. Because they do go back to Shadow Logoth in book 4, I want to say.
A couple times, 5? I think.
And I think that's perhaps because he follows them back there, and that's where it happens. Okay, but that's just what I talked about earlier. Like, a lot of shit is happening now in book 1 that I thought happened in later books. Maybe this is actually one of those things that happened in later books. I'm not wrong about it. All right. So, yeah, and Basil also mentions that people are starting to see strange shapes creeping around outside the city. And Rand is like, "What kind of strange shapes?" And Basil's like, "Trollocs, how do I know?" He's like, "Actually, you were spot on. It is Trollocs," which we find out later. But yeah, so they're amassing outside the city walls because now Matt is there, Rand is there, and the dagger itself is actually causing, it's like a beacon to the darkness. They don't know what that is, but anyway. I don't know if that's now or then or later, but anyway. So also, here's my first note. Moritz was right. Yes, we talk about the wrappings on the swords. Yes. White wrappings with a red cord. Queen, bad. That's all you need to know. Red wrappings with a white cord. Queen, good. Okay? And the streets are packed with people, and even Outlanders are now wrapping their swords and wearing armbands, and most people are wearing the white, which is anti-queen. Because they blame the queen and her allegiance with the Aes Sedai and having a lighter and everything for all the bad shit that's happening in the world.
Yeah.
So, typical shit that's happening in today's political atmosphere. It was happening then, or will happen in the future, depending on where you are on the wheel right now.
Turns out fantasy people are also idiots.
Yeah. I think that's the general theme. Everyone's an idiot. So, the streets are packed. They are... people are thronging. They're just trying to get to go and see Loghain, see the false dragon. Also, this doesn't happen every day, so everyone's there. And even people are pushing the white cloaks aside. Normally, the white cloaks, when they walk through the city, have this bubble around them where no one interferes. One guy actually intentionally shoulders one of the white cloaks out of the way and kicks him out of the way. But like nobody even notices. There's just so many people.
So great.
Yeah, finally somebody. And they can't do anything about it. So yeah, like I said earlier, most people are wearing white. There's very few of the people with the red bands, and even when you do see them, they're clumped together in groups of 10, 20, for protection, because they notice this shit is not looking good. So Rand eventually shoulders his way through people. He's cruising around through the city for ages. Finds a street where the parade is going to come down, where they're going to come down the street with the trumpets and the carriage and parade Loghain. And he finds a spot to stand. He's naturally taller than everybody.
Yeah.
So he's got a good spot. He hears the people behind him cursing him like, "God damn tall people." can't see anything. So he's like, sweet, I
Down
can
in
stand.
front.
Yeah, you down in front. So Rand's stoked. He's like, oh, sweet. I'm right in the front. I'm heads taller than everybody else. I'm going to see Logain's face even, And that's when he sees a ripple in the crowd of people like jumping out of the way of something moving through the crowd. And people start speculating, oh, it's Logain already. He's here, And it turns out it's this Fain guy.
This very, very stinky man.
The stinky man. So his rags are stiff, like his cowl. They even like the way he's described, like it's so dirty, like his cloth doesn't even fold anymore. So
Yeah.
he's stinky. He's obviously not pleasant to look upon or smell upon. And if people are just getting the fuck out of the way as fast as they can, and as he comes like within in line with where Rand is standing, he stops, swivels his head, and points directly at Rand as if he can smell him or see him or sense him in some way instinctively, and screams. And then the word that Robert Jordan uses is scuttle. He starts scuttling, not running.
He's a feral animal.
He's a fucking feral animal. He's on all fours, scuttling across the ground. Like you can't see his face. He's in this dirty cowl and everything. So, Rand just legs it. Like,
Also, Rand doesn't recognize him.
Yeah,
we know it's Padan Fain, but he just refers to him as the beggar. Rand doesn't clock that it's Padan Fain.
Exactly.
That's how unrecognizable he is.
Just the worst. And I mean, dark friends are everywhere trying to kill Rand. So he has, all the right, justification to try and get the fuck out of there. So he runs.
Yes.
So he legs it. But of course, there's throngs of people. So he has to. Isn't that another collective term? A throng?
Yes.
How many is that?
Yes.
A fist is 100. A throng, we have no idea. So anyway, he starts running through these people, pushing them out the way, just to get away from this crazy beggar guy who's obviously a dark friend, and 99% chance he wants to murder Rand. So Rand's legging it out of there, and he breaks through the crowd and stumbles, and then just runs through the streets. And he spends some time after that just cruising, but he still wants to go and see Logain. Like, he's come all this way, and this is what this is what he's here for. Well, to find his friends and Moiraine and everybody, but he really wants to see Logain. So he's running around the city trying to find another place to go and see the procession. Can't find any spots like that awesome spot he had in the beginning, right up in the front. There's none of those left. So he notices, he looks up and he sees, some of the flags, like there's the inner city. So that might be a good place up there. So he runs up this hill and there's a wall, which he scales like a champion, which is apparently a flat stone wall with just a few cracks, and he's wearing boots. So he scampers up there to go and sit up on top of this wall so that he can, get a good view of everything. And just as he gets to the top and sits down and settles, he hears the trumpets and the procession starts coming through, and it's massive, and there's swordsmen and pikemen and archers all in livery, and there's massive carriage comes through. I think it's 16 horses carrying it, pulling it. And as it comes through there's this massive cage on the back of this carriage with Logain in it, and Aes Sedai surrounding it, sitting in the corners, just staring at him intently, obviously shielding him from the One Power. We know this as the readers. But the way that Logain is standing in this cage, holding onto one of the bars with his head high, he has the bearing of a king. He's tall, he's got these long flowing locks. Like, he doesn't look like a man defeated at all. Like, he looks like, this is a formidable person as well, not more formidable people. So, and just before Logain goes into the castle gates, there's a moment where he looks back over the crowds and he throws his head back and laughs, like maniacally. And this is the scene that I was talking about a couple of episodes ago. This is what I remember. Because Logain later on says that he saw a beacon of light on top of the wall. And that's when he sees Rand. This is the moment he sees him. And he starts laughing because, haha, you think I'm the problem? Wait until you find that guy.
Yeah.
That's why he thinks it's so funny that everybody's making such a big deal about him. But because he doesn't see Rand, he just sees light, like pure, unadulterated power. And that's what we come back later to. But this is the part that, like, if you're reading this for the first time, you'll see. And he laughed. He threw his head back and laughed. It's whatever, nothing. But now knowing some things. So anyway, the Aes Sedai are shielding him on this back of this carriage, and while they're intently staring at him, all the warders around the carriage are instinctively, keeping their eyes on the crowd trying to protect
Yeah.
them all, being warders in their cloaks. It's all very unsettling. So yeah, just that this Rand thinks that Logain looks like a king. You know, he looks like he's a man of power. That's what we get. So while after Logain has passed through the gates into the courtyard of the palace, Rand is trying to get a better look. He's shifting around on the wall, and he thinks to himself out loud. He thinks, "I wonder why all of those Aes Sedai were just sitting staring at him." And he hears a girl's voice from the tree branches above him saying, "Oh, they were shielding him, silly." And he's like, "What the?" He's surprised, looks up, loses his balance, and falls out of the tree, knocking himself unconscious. And that's where we leave this chapter. We all know whose voice that is, but we'll leave it for the next person to take it up there. But yeah, just this idea that Logain, this false dragon, although it took half the world's armies to bring him down, he is not a defeated man. He is a powerful dude. Not at all. So is there something that you guys want to add to that?
Oh, yes. It was quite interesting how in this, and we'll call it a short journey from the start when Lan put the sword on and to where he is at now. But
Lan or Rand?
Rand.
Yes.
Yeah. And he when he leaves the inn, he takes the back alley, and the one bouncer, security guard, Lamgwin, sort of says like, "Yeah, just be careful out there, because a guy like you with a sword like that can be handy in a place when we're getting in a tight spot." Like he's done nothing to show him that he can do anything. It's just the way that he's been carrying the sword now. I suppose how he carries himself, sort of that the big security guards are saying, "No, you could be handy around here."
Yeah, in a fight, we'll need you.
Gareth Bryan hints at the same thing later.
Yeah,
when he says that sword belongs with him.
Don't ruin my chapter.
No, sorry, you're setting yourself up for another big statement in your summary. Setting the table. I already mentioned that you see Lamgwin here for the first time, and he also features in the story later when they're traveling with Morghese, and they've got their own little adventuring party. So this time around, I've taken a lot more note of him. Yeah, and I just like him because he is so unflappable and into cats.
He's always stroking a cat.
Yeah. Well, cats are valuable commodity at that stage in the city.
Apparently.
Yeah. It's like the Bitcoin of Randland.
Rand also scuttled up the wall, but he did scrape his hand and cut his hand open as he was trying. His knees and all of that.
He was in a rush.
But he says that the wall was expertly made, and you can't even see the joins between the stones. And like Jody's saying, his booted feet find irregularities in the face of the stone. So he's not like scraping his boot in between stones. It's like irregularities on the stones themselves, and his hands are sort of seeking out these handholds and footholds and stuff. And Elaine says something about it. I won't say that. I won't step on your chapter again.
Too late.
My only note is Rand is an awesome climber.
Yes, but I think he mentions it like the cliffs behind Emmons Field or something, the sand cliffs or something.
Yeah, and even Perrin climbed those.
Even useless Perrin, who's good with girls.
His pesky muscles get in the way all the time.
Yeah.
Who are the guys with the white wrappings that are just eyeballing the Queen's blessing?
Yeah, they're standing on a barrel or something. Yeah, dark friends.
Maybe it's just because I don't think anything comes of this, but maybe it's just because they know that is a spot for, let's call them Reds, to congregate.
Yeah.
The same guys get back, or they are still there watching the inn, except with black eyes a little bit later.
when Rand comes back, and Lamgwin makes an offhanded comment about them trying to steal a cat.
Trying, operative word.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely not white cloaks, but the white cloaks are in town as well.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yes, they are. and getting shunted around by throngs of people, which is very satisfying.
So Rand was running through the crowds, and there was a lot of people that had white banners and white around their swords, and he was sort of like trying to keep hiding his sword that was covered in red, almost cursing the fact that red cloth was cheaper than white cloth.
Yeah.
Yes.
He would have
Like he's
felt
chosen a side, but accidentally.
accidentally
Yes.
chose the right side. Deviran.
Yes.
But then he wonders, like, would
Yeah.
Basil Gill have helped him if he had chosen white?
Yeah. So it all worked out good in the end, especially since we find out into whose garden he has recently tumbled.
Oh yes.
Yes. And on that note, why don't you take us through chapter 40, Vil? The Web Titans.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Rand took a deep fall. He for lack
Literal and figurative.
yeah,
You could say he fell for Elaine.
yeah, yeah, heads over heels. Anyway, he kind of
Stop it.
gets and
I almost did a spit take on the laptop there.
he gets
Excellent.
gathers. He's confused whether he's in a dream, and somehow Bazalman's in there, and then he sort of like has to shake him. So he's really concussed. He blicks him down. It's a really hard one. And then he sort of like, oh wait, there was a girl. Where's the girl? And then he steadies himself. He gets on, sort of looks around, and he's looking around, and then all of a sudden there's this. I mean, young, maybe 2 years younger than him, very attractive blonde girl, blue eyes, and her dress is immaculate. Like the embroidery, the material, except that she was in climbing trees in it. And he's kind of
Yeah.
like, what lady would be climbing trees in such silk dress? And there's like branches and twigs still stuck in it. And yeah, she's like, "Are you okay?" Like, and immediately sort of rummages in her pockets, and she's carrying around ointments and rags and all little things to heal. But they very calm, like, "Oh, good, like, what are you doing here?" Like, well spoken, calm about it, and he's kind of very confused at this stage, sort of what's happening. And then he notices there's a boy with her, and he's like, "Yeah, well, we'll never hear the end of this, Elaine. If Mother finds out," the boy said suddenly, she'll told us to stay in our rooms, and you just had to get a look at Logan, didn't you? Now look at what it has got us." And he's like, "Okay, here's the names," and picks up that's Cowan and Elaine. And it took Rand a minute really to realize what's happening. And he gets to his feet and he's like, "No, I'm fine. Like, everything's okay." And she's like, "No, no, you hurt. Let me have a look." And he's protesting, "No, you'll get blood on your hands. Like, you dressed way too finely for this." Now, at this stage, Rand has only seen 3 women dressed that finely. Moiraine, the lady that tried to kill them in the stable, and now Elaine. So
Mhm.
so he's wary as well, but it doesn't appear to be dark friendish. We should say it
You never
seems
know until that flaming sword or dagger is in your
dagger
face.
comes
Yes.
out, hissing daggers and all of that. But she takes care. I mean, she pulls out a piece of silk uh, ribbon to tie a bandage on his head, and he's like, "No, you can't use that. I mean, any girl in Emmonsfield will cherish something like that and keep it
Mm.
for special feast day occasions." So obviously, money's not an object to her, and he sort of now she's going on about mother, and he's like, "But whoa, now, who's your mother? You know, I think he's said about the Queen's Captain's Guard and the trouble there, and it's like, no, it's like mother is the Queen, like Queen Morgaze." And Rand basically shits himself at this news. He's like, "Right on.
Aptly
I
put.
was told to stay out of sight and not get into trouble, and I'd literally fallen into the Queen's palace gardens."
Mhm.
Now here we are, and yeah, that's when another person joins the lot, and this is now their half brother.
There, everyone's
Hey,
half brother.
everyone's half
Half
brother.
brother. So yeah, that is now, what is his name?
Galad.
Galadrid.
Galad.
Yeah, no,
Galadrid.
Galad, and his Rand describes him as being too handsome to be a man. Almost, it's the
Yes.
most.
Not. I think I get the feeling like he's too pretty to be a man. Not that he's too handsome. Like he's
Mm.
Anyway, moving on. He sort of, but Elaine is quite stern with him, sort of almost laying down the law that, look, she's the queen next in line. She's not going to take
Mm.
orders from anyone, let alone a half brother. And you do get that sense that there's maybe a bit of jealousy or like envy in the rankings of the royal family. But yeah, he sort of clears the way, turns around, and obviously, as soon as he cleared the corner, he went bolting to go and get the Queen's Guard, and ran at this stage like, "Oh man, this isn't good. This is really not good. Trouble is upon us." And and they say like, look, I need to get out of here, like I'll start scaling the wall. And she's like, look, no, there's a door or a gate that's overgrown, no one knows about it, like you can get out there. But before you could even actually get to it, they hear boots coming, and the Queen's Guard is on the way, and with Talanvo
Hmm.
that leads the guards to the garden. And but Elaine knows to handle her mouth. She gets him sort of like, they jump in front of Rand, and they're like, no, this is our guest. You're going to treat him with the same courtesy and respect as any guest of the Queen. And everything he says, she rebuts and sort of, okay, cool. Are you going to tell me now? And yeah, that's he kind of gets to the point where he doesn't know what to say to Elaine. But the news had already at that time spread through the palace all the way to the queen, and news comes all the way back that no, bring all of them to her. It's like, you've been summoned. So
Now you're all in shit.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
shit has happened. Gavin is like, oh, now we're in it. I told you. I told you. And yeah, they get on the move, and they moving into the palace. And Rand is still obviously so head bashed that he doesn't even realize what he's walking through. Yeah, so they eventually go through, and they're not going to the formal throne room. They're going to one of the other rooms, and Gowan sort of takes a little bite. Oh, well, that she's never executed or ordered someone's execution in that room. But, you know,
Yeah, we should be all right.
we should be all right. And they enter the room, and as they enter the room, like Elaine takes this big bow, and Rand sort of hand on the sword, goes down onto one knee, knuckles touching the ground, like the full formal bow. And the Landvor is a little bit peeved at this, that this peasant-looking boy knows the formalities. And I'm certain Tam should have told him or taught him quite a bit in his years. Like they've had their books that they read on the farm.
Not about that. I don't think Tam has ever said anything to Rand about bowing to a queen.
I think he was
Because
just
he
watching
would have done.
Gowan. He just copied
Yeah, he
Gowan.
was copying.
Not
Yeah.
just copying. But yeah,
Yeah.
he goes down, stands up straight, and before Elaine can sort of pop in and start speaking, like Morgas just shuts it down. Like, I told you kids, like, do not leave the room. Like, this man is dangerous. But yeah, they didn't listen, and they went, and they wanted to see Logan. And yeah, so she goes on, no, look, he's a royal subject, and he's from the Two Rivers, and he just, we spoke to him, he fell over the wall. And, you know, it's like, so they start sort of, you know, who are you? And Rand then that doesn't lie, tells his name. And this is where we meet Elida. She's kind of sitting down knitting, and Rand can't not figure out what the color of a dress is, because it's kind of shimmering, but not even looking up, knitting, and all of a sudden she gets up and she sort of moves forward and sort of questions like, where you from? The part where she lifts open his arm to see the color of the
Mm.
skin. It's like, your hair colored, like, this isn't right, like everything sounds wrong. And
She doesn't buy the Two Rivers
no,
story.
she doesn't buy the Two River story. But Rand sort of, he's adamant, and he's not going to fault on that. Like, yeah, my mom was an outlander, but I'm from the Two Rivers. I'm a sheep herder.
Mm.
And then she's like a sheep herder carrying a sword, and she sort of touches the sword hilt, and she says, "Oh, a heron mark blade as well." And this is when the room just goes to all hell. Every guard just sort of heron mark blade in the house jumps up, and the Captain General of Gareth Bane he jumps in front of the queen, sort of to shield her. And he's like, no, my sword, got it from my dad, got given it to me by my dad. It was my dad's. I question and grill him a bit. And what's nice about Morgay, she doesn't really listen just to Elida and often references back to Gareth. Like, okay, what do you think? And this is this part where it's like, no, the sword belongs to the boy. The way that he carries it, the way it is standing, that is his sword. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
no doubt about that. And she's quite torn at this stage. Like, okay, what do we actually do with this boy? Morgase asks Elida to, like, what do you have a foretelling about this? And Elida replied, and I swear under the light that I can say no clearer. From this day, Andor marches towards Spain division. The shadow is yet to darken. It's darkened to its blackest, and I cannot see if the light will come after. Where the world is wept one tear, it will weep thousands. This is what I foretell. And then very quietly, she sort of only says it, I think, loud enough just for Rand to hear. This too I foretell.
Mm.
Pain and division comes to the whole world, and this man stands at the heart of it. And then, kind of more loudly, I obey the queen, she whispered, and speaks it clearly. So it's that's when she sort of had her foretelling, and then Morgase then asks Gareth, what's your take on it? And it's like, yeah, I hear Elida's foretelling. However, any farmer can say that because look at what the lands look like. It's kind of everything has gone to shit over here. So Morgase sort of then says, "All right, I'm not gonna be part of this. I swore to uphold the justice, and however high or low." And she asks Rand, did you climb the garden wall simply to look at the false dragon? And he's, yes, my queen. And do you mean harm to my throne, to the throne of Andor, and my daughter and my son? And he's like, I mean no harm to anyone, my queen, not to you or yours at least. Yours least of all. I think there's one that I missed there. She asked him about the sword, if he got the sword from the Two Rivers, and we also said yes. I think that was just the three that she asked him just the three questions, and then she said no, take him, let him out, show him all courtesy. He's okay, like there's no problem here. And that there was a bit of sigh of relief, and very much to the disappointment of Elida, because she wanted to get a clause into him. I think she's already felt or sensed something there. But Elaine and Gowan also joins the procession then to lead him out, sort of to make sure that he's being treated fairly and with courtesy. And when they get to the palace gates, she mentions to Rand, if I had mentioned to Mother that I think you were handsome, you would have certainly be locked up in a cell tonight. Farewell, Rand.
Hey yo.
Hey, yo.
He's getting a lot of that.
Yeah, jeez. It's picking them up with
The
that.
handsome young man.
Yeah, but she dismissed the lot of them, but again held Elida back, and that's the last that we see of them in this chapter. What I did forget was that line that when Elaine said to him when he fell into the gardens, that, oh, you climbed the wall so well, but you don't fall that well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's there's a lot that happens in this chapter. I mean, this is a pretty beefy one. We have a lot to discuss, I think.
There's a lot of fairly important characters being introduced in this single chapter. Elaine, Gowan, Gallad, Morgase, Elida, even Talanvor. Like they all feature in some way. I mean, especially obviously Elaine and Elida, those two probably more so than any of the others, but Morgase in her way. And then Gowan and Gallad have their own little arcs that are also very compelling.
Yeah.
Elaine also, we learn there that Elaine is going to go to the tower as well.
Yeah, in 1 week's time.
In 1 week's time, she's going to the tower for her teaching. Now, we don't know that she's got any potential at this stage. I don't mention anything of that.
No.
But
But she
yeah,
turns out that she does have a little bit, but not enough for her to become an Aes Sedai, I think. Is that...
Elaine? No, Elaine's got plenty. Morghese didn't have
Ah,
much.
it was more
Mm.
gaze. All right.
She can barely channel, but she can a bit. So she never became full blown Aes Sedai. But she went to the tower for training, and she had a little bit of a affinity for it. Elaine, I think, figures out traveling or something like gateways.
Mm.
Like she figures out a big thing, and I think is she not also the one that figures out how to make Hearthstone?
Shit, bro.
I don't know.
I
That-
don't remember any of this whatsoever.
that could all be bullshit. But yeah, she kills it.
Also, one of the things that stood out here is that when Rand's standing in that room after he stands up after bowing, that and Elida comes down and walks in front of him, that he just stares her in the eyes. Like he doesn't flinch. He holds himself like the dragon reborn right from the beginning.
Yes.
Like he is sure of himself, and he's like, he feels queasy in his stomach when he does it, but he does it. And the fact that he says, my mother was an outlander. Like, no, bro, your mother was the former queen. She was sitting there a few years ago on that dais.
On this throne. Yes, before Morghese, your mother was the queen.
It's your father who's the outlander. But yeah, anyway, that was a funny thing as well. Now, knowing what we know, obviously.
Yeah.
But also that Elida's like, she's like what Vinny was saying, she's just sitting in the background, knitting, throwing comments in every now and then, interrupting the queen. You know, like her position of power is high, and she's
Originally, she's speaking without even looking up from her knitting.
Yeah, like just disdain for the queen or whatever. And the fact that I think it was Elaine that mentions that she gives Elida orders, but never Gareth. Like Gareth, she makes suggestions, and Gareth just agrees with them.
Yeah,
but she'll tell Elida, "Sit down, woman."
When Rand is escorted out of the city, or out of the palace rather, at that stage, he asks Gawain then, you know, like, what is this that everyone says I don't look like a Two River or a Western? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, it's kind of like, duh. And up until this point, there's just, you liken somewhat to an Aiel man. It's like, look at your hair, look at your eyes, look how tall you are. Just put a scarf around your face and put some other clothes on, and you're an Aiel man. Like, there's no doubt about it. And Rand is like, okay, what? I'm an Aiel man. So
everybody is saying this to him.
This is the second time in these chapters.
Yes.
So it was now Loyal early on, and Tom in the beginning. You're as tall as an Aiel man, so maybe now it's sinking in that, oh, all right, maybe I should go buy a scarf.
Yes.
A shufa. I always imagined Gawain to be a redhead for some reason, but I guess he's just also blonde, like Elaine.
Like his sister.
Because Rand sees from his coloring and his face that they are obviously siblings.
But doesn't Elaine have red hair?
No.
Reddish blonde.
She's strawberry
It's actually
blonde.
Strawberry blonde, yes.
Let's get to the technicalities then.
Yes.
I don't have my book here, but I distinctly remember reading that she has red hair and thinking, oh, I always thought she was blonde. Am I just imagining that?
No, it's reddish. It's red gold, I think, is maybe what was misleading. I mean, Avienda obviously has red hair.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see her. So we got 2 out of the 3 wives so far. We're just waiting for number 3.
Yes. Yeah, and that takes a little while, I think.
All right. It's not going to happen in this book.
No, definitely not.
Well, you never know.
I love how Rand, before he realizes who he's talking to, and Elaine is busy like sort of bandaging him up, he asks Gawain, does she always expect everyone to do what she says they should do? And Gawain is sort of surprised, like, yes, she is the daughter heir of the throne, of course. I also remember having a distinct disliking of Galad from the beginning, but now not at all.
No. Yeah, I'm on the same boat.
He's just doing what he thinks is right. I mean, he is right. There's an armed stranger talking to the princess and the prince in the royal garden where he's trespassing. That is not a normal state of affairs. Yes, it is right to call the guards to at least make sure that everything is okay.
And he becomes a white cloak, right?
Yes.
joins the White
I
Cloaks.
mean, he has by the end of the book, by Tom and Gaidon, I think he's the Lord Captain Commander.
Something, yes. High ranking.
Because he challenges Aemon Volder, the guy that causes the downfall of Pedro Nile. He challenges Volder to a one-on-one sword fight, and Volder is a blade master. And he ends up killing him and becomes the Lord Captain on the spot.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Wow. So much cool stuff coming.
Yes. Huge shit.
Well, the White Cloaks does suit his personality, I suppose.
It does. Yeah, he is. I think early on, it hasn't happened yet, but I think early on they talk about the fact that he is probably going to become a White Cloak, or he's already expressed aspirations to become a White Cloak, or something along those lines. So when you read it, you're like, yep, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
At one point, he actually breaks his own sort of code, and I think he helps Rand escape.
Yes.
At some point, or there's something that he does where he goes against his own nature.
Because that's when he finds out that their mother was the same person. He doesn't know this.
I think so.
That happens way at the end. Like,
it's way late. Yeah,
they spend most of the books not knowing that they are related.
Yes, yeah.
I love
what else.
Morgase there when Elaine and Gowan was sort of piping up for Rand. Says like, you obviously don't read your books very well. The Two Rivers has not seen a tax collector in 6 generations, nor have they seen Queen's Guards in 7.
Yes.
Stubborn. They don't even know they're part of us.
Yeah, and Gowan is also surprised when Rand says he's from the Two Rivers, and Gowan's like, oh, like way west.
Yeah.
All the way up against the mountains of mist. Also, I obviously didn't know this the first time I read it, and I didn't even recognize his name when I got to the end of the story, and you read about Talonvor again, and the torch he carries for Morgase. But you meet him in book 1. When they're traveling together toward the end of the story, it's like Morgase is like weighing up whether she should be romantically involved with him or not, and he is quite clearly smitten with her, and probably is already at this point.
Yeah. Indeed. Jeez, like now that you mention it, I remember that. But
yes,
wow,
he travels with Lamgwin, who we also read about in this chapter, and Basil Gill and Morgase and Linny as they escape Caemlyn, and I think they eventually join Perrin and Fail. And Morgase acts as a maid to Fail.
Indeed.
Without Fail knowing.
You know who else pops up later that I read about sometime during this week in another related post somewhere?
Who?
Aludra? Is that her name?
The Illuminator.
The Illuminator. Remember her? There's going to be a whole thing about that too. Just
rad.
Like
Amazing.
So many characters that I'd completely even forgotten existed. They played an important role. I mean, she comes up with fucking gunpowder. So
they drop names and foreshadowing. I've got a light on the brain, but foreshadowing hints and stuff all over these things, and then leave it dormant for literally books and books and books, and then this character comes back. I mean, Bail Domon also comes back. Him you remember because he is such a memorable character in that flight down the Arenal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so cool on the second and third go through to read all these names that you recognize from like the final books.
No, that's speaking of Aludra. I think her name is.
Mm-hmm. I think it's Aludra.
Bail Domon hook up. They travel together, and there's a circus at some point.
You're grabbing snatches from like all over the story and putting them all together in a single sentence. But Aludra, the Illuminator, doesn't hook up with Bail Domon. It's a Seanchan woman that hooks up with Bail Domon, a Seanchan woman who leaves the Seanchan ways away. I can't remember her name, but Aludra travels with Matt, and they build the dragons and they build the cannons using gunpowder, using her stuff.
Jeez, I've forgotten about all of that.
We're going to be saying that a lot. You have to pay $5 every time you say that.
Oh, damn.
Wait until you get to that exciting part about the mystery of the too few sitters or whatever the fuck side story that went nowhere. But anyway, I don't remember that.
What?
About the sitters? Don't you remember that? I think that was
What
about
in the
book 10 was about that, like a whole book about
in the
nothing.
tower?
Yes. Like the
Oh, I
sitters,
love that.
they
I
weren't.
love the tower politics.
No, bro. The whole the listeners will know what I'm talking about. Send us a message. But yeah, Matt and Rand sleeping under bushes part, that entire storyline about some mystery to do with the sitters, that there weren't enough of them of
Hmm.
one color or whatever. It is, as I recall, unresolved, and means even if it is resolved, totally useless. It means nothing in the like towards the end of the story. Why did you spend the whole book on that? Anyway.
We will cover that in depth.
Oh yes, I look forward to it.
I've got my worst part of the story behind me already.
Yours is in book 1. Lucky you. I got 9 books to go until I reach mine.
Well, I mean, it's a well documented fact that, lots of Wheel of Time readers refer to those book, I think it's 8, 9, and 10 as the slog.
Yeah.
I found 10 especially challenging.
Yes.
Book 8, book 8 is when I caught up with the series, and like all the books had been written up until that point, and then when I finished book 7, it's like, okay, there's no more. And book 8, I remember being released when it was, very few listeners would know what this means, but our matric rage. So like when you finish school, your final year of high school,
Schoolies.
everyone goes away for a weekend. Yeah, schoolies in Australia, it's probably different names everywhere, but you go away for a weekend and the kids just get smashed up, drunk,
Spring break.
party all the time. It was the day we got to Plettenberg Bay, which is the town in which we had our rage, and we got there. Most of the guys got out of the car and walked straight into the bottle store. I walked into a bookshop and I bought book 8 there, and then I saw it in the bookshop because I'd been going into bookshops waiting for it. I was like, oh, there's a bookshop next to this liquor store. I'm gonna go in and find it. I bought book 8, went into the liquor store, bought all my booze, got in the car, went back to the townhouse where we're staying in, cracked a beer, took the book and went to my room and started reading until like George or one of our friends came in. He's like, dude, what are you doing? Put your fucking fantasy book away and come party. And then I did.
Yes.
But like I read book 8 in the midst of that. Yes. So out of character for me.
That the first Wheel of Time book that I bought brand new was book 9. And I was living with you. That's when we lived together.
There we go.
Studying. And I went shopping and I went into a bookstore waiting for it. And there it was, like a similar story. Students living together. And that's when I bought book 9. And there it is on my bookshelf still to this day.
The same one?
Same one. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I guess we've exhausted everything from that chapter and everything up until the end of book 10. Should we just jump to book 11?
We have a responsibility.
We do. So, we will do this for our people.
Yes, with great power comes book 10. Comes great to bring.
Okay, let's do the last chapter for this stretch.
Oh, shit.
No, we haven't.
I thought we were done.
Love a sidetrack.
Okay.
Old Friends and New Threats, chapter 41. Oh, man. Just reading that title makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Yes. We join Rand as he gets back to the Queen's Blessing, panting like he'd run the whole way from the palace, not even caring if like other people wearing the white noticed a person in red running and decided it's a good opportunity to just pounce on him. But Lamgwin is at the door, and that's when he talks about having dealt with the two guys with the white cockades and like the sword coverings being across the road, and it's like Billy mentioned, like the one's got a black eye and they're looking all sullen and stuff. Like Lamgwin just dealt with him. In my notes, they look roughed up, and he tells Rand that Basil's in the library. And when Rand gets into the library, Basil Gill's there playing stones with Loyal, losing because it seems like Loyal usually wins. Mm-hmm. And then so Rand tells him everything that happened, and Basil Gill's like, "Oh yeah, sure. We had Gareth Bryan just in the common room a little while ago. You know, we can all tell tall tales." And Rand's like, "No, dude, this really happened."
Yes.
And it's while he's busy talking to them, and Basil sort of like eventually he starts coming around to it. He's like, "Oh shit, okay, this really happened." He at first doesn't believe him, and then and when he does, then start buying into the story that Rand's telling. He's like, "Okay, look, you guys have probably at most 2 days to get out of the city." It's gone from like, "Oh yeah, whatever," to like, "Okay, you need to do GTFO."
Yeah.
because apparently that's how long it'll take them to search every inn, and maybe it'll take that long if they start at the fake inn name that Rand gave when he said where he was staying. Because he knows that if Elida wants to find him, she will make a plan to have that
And
done.
she wants to find him.
Yes. Basil offers to pay for Mother Grub, the sort of, wisdom analog across the street, to come sort out Matt if he can't get Matt up and moving to get out of the city in time. And Loyal also immediately says, I want to come with you. And Rand says, look, we spoke about this. And Loyal just says, look, man, the pattern is shifting and you stand at the heart of it. And that immediately triggers that synchronicity with the statement that Elida made in her foretelling about, the world will weep and this man stands at the heart of it.
Yeah.
So Rand just says, okay, cool, you can come with me. Obviously, it would be a pleasant experience for Rand to have someone more upbeat and, capable traveling with him than what Matt has been. And then a serving girl knocks on the door and she calls for Master Gill and she says, look, there's white cloaks in the common room and they're looking for 2 dark friends from the 2 rivers. And Mr. Gill's like, okay, cool. I'll go deal with this. And he goes out into the common room. I can't imagine. I didn't really know where Rand was standing. Was he standing at a door? Because Rand sort of, the chapter is from Rand's point of view and he sort of sees what's happening, but he must be just sort of lurking in the back, maybe looking through a cracked door or something like that. But the white cloaks are basically, just throwing their weight around and trying to sort of intimidate the people. And Basil Gill just says, get the fuck out of my inn. You carry no authority here. As he's talking to them, Basil says that everyone in the inn, like, don't come here with your talk of dark friends. Everyone in this inn is a good queen's man. And then the white cloak makes a comment about the fact that, well, we all know who your queen sort of fraternizes with, her links to the White Tower, well documented. And as he starts making these comments about the queen, everyone in the common room, do they stand up? Like, I think like everyone sort of like stands up and looks at him, and he doesn't even notice. But the guys around him, the other white cloaks, are starting to look around nervously, like, uh-oh, what are we going to do here?
They draw their swords, don't they? They all stand up.
I think so. They draw their swords and daggers. Like the guys that don't have swords are drawing daggers and stuff. They are ready to just, deal with these guys.
What did you say about our queen?
What? Yes. Lamwin's already warmed up from early in the day. He's
Lamwin blocks the door.
He's blocking the door.
We're gonna fuck them up now, boys.
Basil sends them off, and then he has to say to Langwin, "No, let them out." He's like barring the door, ready to break some white cloak face. He then tells Rand, after the White Cloaks are dealt with, and they sort of like, oh, you haven't seen the last of us, we'll be back.
Blah, blah, blah.
And they're like, okay, whatever. And as they leave, everyone in the inn is sort of like clapping each other on the shoulder, going, good, we got one over those idiots.
Yeah.
And then Basil Gill just says to Rand, look, I mean, for you guys to leave the city, you're going to have to be smuggled out. We are going to have to make a plan to get you out of here without anyone noticing. And then Rand is surprised that White Cloaks are looking for him, because there's no reason for White Cloaks to be after him. It's obviously the White Cloaks are after Perrin and Egwene. They're not after Rand and Matt, because the White Cloaks don't know about Rand and Matt. They're just talking about 2 dark friends from the 2 rivers. That's Perrin and Egwene that have escaped.
I ask the same question. Was it for Perrin and Egwene that had escaped? Or was it for Matt and Rand that caused in Balon the upheaval, and they knew they were going to Caemlyn?
No, I think that's too much of a stretch. I think they are looking specifically for Perrin and Egwene. The guys in Balon, the young Bornold, didn't know that they were from the 2 rivers, and I think that's a stretch. I don't know if he knew that they were going to Caemlyn either. I don't know if the White Cloaks knew that in Balon. I'm pretty sure it's Perrin and Egwene, because just the way it's worded as well, like Rand even ponders it. He's like, why would White Cloaks be after Matt and I? But anyway, that's all academic, because a maid arrives and says that there is a lady in the kitchen asking for Rand and Matt by name. And Basil Gill is like, oh my God, did Elaine Trackend come down to my inn to find this interloper? Like, do I have royalty standing in my kitchen? But then Rand just says, no, I never mentioned Matt to Elaine, so no one from the palace would know. And as he's saying that, he sort of realizes, hang on, and he starts smiling and he runs into the kitchen. Basil Gill's trying to say, wait, be careful, but he doesn't care, and he runs in, and there is Lan and Moiraine and Egwene and Perrin, and it is the joyous reunion that everyone has been waiting for so long. It's so heartening, eh? Like it feels so good. And they're all like trying to hug him at the same time, and he's awkwardly trying to shake Perrin's hand and hug the girls at the same time, and they're sort of getting, and Moiraine looks unflappable, like she. I think Nynaeve even says that when they were sort of zigzagging around the city, but when she got close to the Queen's Blessing, they rode straight into the back, walked into the kitchen without asking if they were there, and just said, "Tell the innkeeper that we're looking for Matt Cawthon and Randall Thor." And so she's standing in the kitchen, just looking unsurprised.
Yeah.
And Perrin is sort of keeping his eyes downcast, Rand notices, so obviously not wanting anyone to see the yellow in his eyes. And Basil Gill is just so impressed to have an Aes Sedai in his kitchen. He's just like, okay, I'm sure you'd rather go stay with Elida in the palace and everything. You know, I'm sorry about the state of my inn. And she's like, no. I think I'll stay here, and you must let me pay for you. And he's like, okay, well, you know, if you're sure you don't want to be staying in the palace, I'll give you my best room as a gift. You know, like he is just falling over himself to try and help them, which is also great. And Nynaeve asks where Matt is. And Rand says, okay, cool, he'll take them up to the room. Matt hasn't exactly been himself. So he takes them up the back way up to the room. And Egwene asks about the red and white cloth, and Rand sort of plays it down in a weird, awkward way. I didn't know why that was. Like he sort of brushes it aside like it's nothing. This might be a stretch, but I don't know if maybe him wearing the red, being a loyal Queen's man, might make it look like he has some kind of bond with the royal family and Elaine, because what he also does when he falls off the wall and Elaine picks him up and sort of, you know, dusts him off and, you know, starts patching him up, before he notices that she's beautiful, he sort of notices all that stuff, and then he notices her beauty, which A, I don't buy, because that's not how guys work, and B, he immediately compares it to Egwene.
Yeah, and feels
guilty about it. Yeah. So when Egwene asks him about what's with your red cloth, he's sort of, oh no, don't worry, it's nothing. So I don't know. This is idle speculation. Could it be guilt? Don't know. They also ask about where Tom is on the way to the room, and Rand has to tell them that he's dead, or at least that he thinks he's dead. And they get to the room, and you know that sort of soured the mood a little bit. But if that soured the mood, then this seeing Matt absolutely destroys it, because they get in there and Nynaeve, look, they walk into the room and Matt's like, "How do you know they are who they say they are?"
Yeah.
And Rand's like, dude,
full of paranoid.
it's fucking Nynaeve, Egwene, and Perrin. Like, these are our people. He's not even happy to see them. And then he looks at Nynaeve when she's trying to sort of check him out, and he says, pretty Nynaeve, you can't help but thinking of yourself as a pretty girl these days, can you? Everyone's changing. And then he looks at Egwene and is like, oh, you've changed a lot as well, haven't you? Would you like to talk about the ways in which you've changed? And sort of just puts a sour, you know, note on this happy reunion. And then Moiraine arrives in the doorway, and she gives an audible hiss as if she's burnt her hand on a hot kettle or something, I think she says. So you can imagine her walking in the door and going,
yeah,
shit.
Moiraine hissed, man.
she yeah, I mean, unflappable Moiraine audibly hisses and then rushes over, grabs Nynaeve and drags her away physically and says, everybody stay the hell away from him. And Moiraine and Matt sort of lock eyes, and Matt just like glares at her like they are staring at each other in a very, very intense way. And she comes closer to him, and he's snarling at her like he's pulling his mouth in like a rictus snarl, and she puts a hand on his knee, and as she does, he obviously whips out the dagger, and he's about to like he tries to stab her or cut her in the face, like
I think he's trying to slit her throat.
Yeah, he's just coming at her. And my notes Land basically teleports from the door to right next to Matt, because the description is something like he basically was there and then is here ignoring the space in between.
Yes.
And he catches Matt's wrist in one hand and doesn't like now Matt can't move. He's like a statue.
Lan's got you.
And
You're not moving. That's it.
and the dagger is like inches away from Moraine's face, and she also doesn't even blink.
Yeah.
Like she knew Lan would take care of the situation, and Lan did.
Yes.
And actually, for the duration of the ensuing conversation, Lan is just standing there with one hand holding Matt. Matt's entire like strength is focused on just his arm because the rest of his body is still curled up, and he's still just trying to get the dagger to Moraine's face. This like single-minded determination to get it there, and it's not moving anywhere because Lan's holding him. But he cannot think or talk or do anything else except for trying to stab or cut or slit her throat. And Moiraine keeps talking like she doesn't ask Lan to like do something about it. She's just having this now conversation with Lan holding imminent death inches away from her face. It's pretty intense, the faith that she has in Lan's capabilities and the fact that he is able to execute on those expectations. Okay, so Lan basically teleports, yes. Then Moiraine says, Dark Friends and Fades, as we hear, Dark Friends and Fades would have been drawn to this thing like iron filings to a magnet, right? So it's starting to sort of explain a bit why Rand and Matt were living under constant attack along the Caemlyn Road. Like the Dark Friends wouldn't know why they are even compelled to seek out the source of this thing, but they would be. And the same thing goes for...
Can I interject there? This comes back to the well-dressed lady that tried to stab them in the barn. When we talked about this, when she saw Matt and she saw the dagger, she made like, like she noticed it, and we had some conjecture about that. And that's in this chapter, Moiraine says that the Dark Friends, especially those that have given their souls away completely, will be more in tune with this kind of darkness. So obviously, this woman was deep into Dark World land, or Dark Friend land, or whatever.
Yes.
So that's why she had this connection to the dagger. That's why she could sense it the way she did.
Okay. I knew her reaction to it was something slightly more, if just a smidgen more, than just someone reacting to a dagger being held to their throat. Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't even consider that. That fits nicely. Rand mentions that people have been seeing shapes outside of the city, and that it could be Trollocs. And then Lan just pipes up and goes, "Oh, it's Trollocs."
Definitely Trollocs.
And he knows like the numbers, he knows how many. He says it's a dozen fists, like there's a dozen fists of Trollocs out there. And did we say a fist is 100 Trollocs?
Yes.
Or is it the small enough? Oh fuck!
That's 1,200 Trollocs sitting outside the walls.
They are talking about how the Trollocs would soon enough, they are going to breach the walls and they're going to come in here because it looks like they're acting out of desperation. And then Perrin makes an offhanded comment about the fact that, it'd be better if they were all dead. And then Moiraine sort of shuts that down and says, if you were dead, it would be easier for the Dark One to get access to you because that is his domain. And that's when Rand notices Perrin's eyes for the first time. I don't think he says anything about it, but he certainly notes it. And then Moiraine sort of reminds them of Matt. Yes, I know this is all well and good. We're all talking about this, but also this guy, and that he's almost dead, and that one of two things would happen: either he would die, or he would be consumed by the power of Mashadar, and he would actually go around spreading it. Like people would only have to spend a little bit of time with him. So less Mashadar and more death, that people would only have to spend a little bit of time with him, and you would be infected by this, like, I don't know what else to call it, but like a supreme negativity and paranoia. And like she says, eventually they regress into a state that they would only want to kill. That's all you become. It's just something that wants to kill all the time. And so she sends them off and says, look, give me some space and some time and let me see what I can do for him. And I think that's where the chapter ends.
Yeah, right before the chapter ends, she whips out her angrill.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Give me some time. Like, I need help with this.
Yes, yeah. This is going to take some work.
And later we know it takes even more work, so they got to take him to the tower, to the White Tower.
Yes, she does something temporary to sort of see him through, and then when he gets to the tower, they can actually heal him.
Because he is on the verge of being completely consumed.
Lost.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone ever says it. They don't say it in this chapter, but I like to think that it's part of his sort of Two Rivers stubbornness that has held this evil at bay for as long as it has.
Probably his Manetherin blood.
Yeah, when I read this the first time, it was like a bad part for me, like because I almost thought like at that point, like Matt has got, well, he does have such a big part to play, but just to
Mm.
see him sort of regress into this bad sort of shadow was, and for so long, and like how it becomes so consuming was kind of like, oh
Mm.
damn it, man, we've already lost Tom. It's not looking good for Matt.
No. Yeah. Luckily, Moiraine.
Saves the day.
Yeah,
Saves their bacon again.
she sure does. You guys have any additional thoughts or things from that little stretch that you want to
Yeah,
highlight?
just the one year. It was they were after Perrin because the text in the book's actually I'm looking for a dark friend. I'm looking for dark friends, a boy from the Two Rivers. So it's not boys, it's
Okay.
just a boy. So it's definitely Perrin then. So yeah, that's right. Makes
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
so dark friends too, but it's a boy from the Two Rivers. And sort of he got cut off.
I also often like when trying to determine these things, like you look at the prose and the actual contents of the surrounding text. You know, the fact that the author felt the need to highlight the fact that the protagonist couldn't understand why they would be looking for him is a clue as to the fact
Obviously,
that
yeah.
it's not necessarily him that they are looking for. They do sort of like leave you a breadcrumb trail to follow.
Man, I'm having the bread now, the second read around. Forget breadcrumbs. Like, I had the breadcrumbs on the first time.
It's so great, and I'm really like, I mean, to the point of like taking note of like when painting the images of these characters in my mind, like really trying to fight against my original concepts that I've sort of dragged along through the decades since reading the stories the first time. Really trying to read the words. So like that's why I brought up earlier. I thought Gawain had red hair, but he's just the same coloring. I don't know if maybe in another chapter they make another mention, you know, because he pops up here and there throughout the series. Um, but I certainly from the beginning thought he had red hair. But he's blonde.
Yeah.
He's a blonde dude.
Also,
Looks like Elaine.
the gardens in the palace are all green.
Mm-hmm.
That's something
Yes.
that Elida is keeping the rats away. She is keeping the grass green and the flowers blooming. And Elaine mentions that and thinks that
Yeah.
it's not
It's
right.
wrong. Yeah, that
It's a bit
she'd
obscene. Yeah.
rather have the farms green. Like, why doesn't she do that rather?
Elida, I think, also said at one point she offered nominate one farm and I can do this for them as well.
And she thought, yeah, that all the other farms around the one farm would be dying and it would just cause unrest,
Yes.
jealousy.
Yeah, totally. Rand notices how green it is in juxtaposition to all the dry,
Mm.
dead brush and trees and
They're
grass and stuff
green and
outside of that garden.
flowering, and there's flowers everywhere, and it's just green grass and green trees.
Yeah.
Lush.
A view to Elaine's character as well. She's similar to Nynaeve in the fact that she's always trying to help. That's why her dress is full of pockets with tinctures and
Yes.
bandages and things.
Yes.
Gavin even mentions that she's always finding strays and helping them. Not
Yes.
that I'm calling you a stray, like no offense.
Yes.
But like she's always ready to help little fallen birds and all kinds of things, and she
Yeah.
like it that their gardens must be green while other people are suffering. Like so, she's royalty, but she does actually care about other people.
Yes. Yes. She has compassion, which is something that you would think would lead her to like a yellow Ajah, but I think Elaine chooses green, battle Ajah.
I think no. I'm saying like I think yes, but I can't. I honestly can't remember.
Neither can
I
I.
think
No idea.
I think she Egwene. I can't remember. I can't remember what she chooses.
Doesn't she choose
But
blue?
Elaine,
I'm sure she goes blue, and then she also, well, obviously is without an Ajah later on,
mm-hmm.
of all Ajahs and none. But yeah, I think she goes
Yes.
blue first
Okay, makes sense. Do love the blues,
because of Moraine.
mostly because of Moiraine.
At any point in time now before this, has Taverin been mentioned in the book yet, or is this the first time here where Loyal says, Taverin, sort of like, yeah, I need to hook up with you. You're going to show me some stuff.
Loyal says it the first time. Moiraine hasn't said anything about it, and no one else would have had grounds to do so.
There's nothing about Min when they meet Min. Nobody mentions Taviran. Is it just us
No,
thinking it in our heads? 'Cause I could have
Min just
sworn.
sees colors all around them, and that they.
Min talks about people like she hints at the fact that they have all these like bright lights around them. I think like these specks of light that sort of float around him and his two friends. But she also mentions that Aes Sedai always have a lot of images around them, and warders also have a lot of images around them. I don't think the term Taverin is used at that point, but she certainly is describing something that would be relevant specifically to Taverin, which I think is all those like bright lights around them.
Gosh, I'm excited
Well,
to see what.
something that I wanted to
You go, Joe.
talking about the show, right? Yeah, I was about to talk about the show. This is that disturbing news that I mentioned at the beginning. We can cut this if you want, but there was some casting news about a new character, another Ibara, a second Ibara, a female character. I can't remember what they're going to call her, like something with an L, L Ibara. And the speculation is that she is Perrin's wife, that they're going to make a major change, that in the beginning in the Two Rivers, Perrin is married already, has a wife. When the Trollocs attack, he's in the forge because they work the forge together. And when the Trollocs attack, he's in the forge, and him and her fight the Trollocs off. And while he's busy swinging his axe in a rage, he turns around to swing and kill a Trolloc, and he kills her. He kills his own wife, and that's what sets him on a mission to leave the Two Rivers, because it just reminds him of her. And that because they were saying that the speculation was that there's not enough motivation for Perrin to leave the Two Rivers. That the fact that
You mean Trollocs trying to murder you does not give you enough reason to leave?
No, I mean, like if Trollocs are trying
I
to
hate
murder
this.
everyone.
I hate every bit of it. It's fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I don't think we've ever spoken about this, and it's something I thought about a lot as well. Is Perrin spends a lot of time with Master Lewin and Elsbeth, at the forge, and everything. But there's an Abara farm.
Yes.
His family lives close by. He just spends his time because he's an apprentice to the blacksmith. It could be the casting
Let's
for
hope
another
it's his
Ibara
mom.
woman. Could literally be his mom.
No, because she's young. I've seen the photo. They're the same age. It's not his mother. The other option,
Oh, Jesus.
the other option that I've heard from the same source is that it is his sister, that Perrin is adopted. He's also from outside of the Two Rivers, and that his adopted sister is this character. So that what makes him give him more motivation to leave is that he's also an outsider. Maybe they are there looking for him, and that's why he leaves the Two Rivers. I don't know. This is speculation, wild speculation.
Wild speculation.
But this woman has been caught, and she has a name, and it is Ibara, and it's not a character from the books that we know.
Interesting. Okay. So, do you guys have your favorite moments ready?
Ooh, yes.
Oh, Villy begin.
No, I started last time. I think it's Joe to start.
I don't have one. Let me think. I forgot about favorite moments completely. You go, and I'll.
Okay, I'll go. Definitely the throne, or not the throne room, the side throne room, and the moment when Elida proclaims that he's got the heron mark blade, and everyone's reaction
reacts
just sort of, oh shit, jump, and Gareth immediately is in front of the queen, like reminiscent of a scene when the sniper tries to take out the president and all the bodyguards jump in front.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And then coupled with that the sword fits with him, and that he stands and he wears his sword.
And that statement carries so much weight on the second read through, because in what an absolute like high regard Gareth Bryan is held. Like, he is one of the great generals. It's him, Davram Bashir, and one other guy.
What other guys? It's Gareth. It's just him.
What other guy? What's your favorite moment, Moritz? I still haven't thought of mine.
I'm torn. Every week I'm like, oh, there's 2 or 3 that I want to mention. Like, the one that I'd written down, so the one that I will go with is the scene where Lan rescues Perrin. The fact that Child Bayar like the wording that's used, like he whips the axe around like lightning,
Mm.
and he spins it so fast that it hums. Like you were previously shown that Child Bauer is also extremely adept with an axe.
Mm.
Like this is his. It looks like it's his weapon of choice. He's also taken that axe and gotten used to it, and it is a very, very well made axe. So he's like an experienced guy with a good weapon, like going full tilt against whatever this invading force is, and the casualness with which Lan just sort of leans to the side and then deals with him and moves on to the next thing is just so great. And that whole scene of Lan, like leading up to it, acknowledging how good Nynaeve is, and his part that he plays in that whole setting of that scene and executing of that scene, the fact that he's been into the camp and out again and could go in whenever he wanted to, it's just more Lan badassery.
Yeah.
He is just the baddest of asses. That came out wrong.
Beautifully put. Very right.
Yeah, still, I'm kind of torn, but I'm going to have to go with, since you've taken the two coolest ones, all the interactions between Rand and Loyal. The fact, and also when he comes back that second time and he's telling that story, when he sees Loyal in the library again,
in the library,
and he's telling that story, and also like he was told specifically, stay out of sight, stay low, hiding is not done. Oh, I've just come back from the Queen's throne room. The false dragon looked at me and laughed. Then I fell in, hung out with the prince and the princess a little bit, met all the royal court and Elida,
yes,
and now I'm back telling the story. And Basil's just like, whatever, bro. Yeah, whatever you say, bro.
Yeah,
but yeah,
true to Perrin, hey?
Yeah, like exactly, like eventually, like I spoke about last time, finally hit his sword. Like you're supposed to be laying low, out of sight, out of mind, running around with a heron mark blade. Then you're wrapping red around it, sticking out even more, hanging out with the queen. Yeah. Stay low, you idiots.
Yeah,
no wonder
scaling the palace walls in broad daylight.
This is why they
an Aes Sedai
all the time. Yeah. Staring down an Aes Sedai, just like getting himself into all situations when he's meant to be just laying low.
Yeah.
I suppose it would be a very boring book if he just laid low for 50 chapters.
Yeah. But that was the other one, Joe, where I had two moments. The other one is when Rand meets Loyal and he's able to tell the full story without holding back on anything. That sense of relief that Rand feels and that I feel as a reader for Rand being able to do that. That was my number two.
Just Loyal as well. In the future, I know they don't like to fight, but when they do, they are ferocious fighters. And doesn't Loyal have axe as well later on, but on a shaft?
A giant axe.
Yeah, like
he sings the axe handle from a tree.
I remember.
And then when the Seanchan arrive, they have full-on Ogier guards.
Yeah,
they've got Ogier soldiers.
Oof, the Seanchan, there's a whole other. Wow, man, those guys. But yeah, we'll get into that, I suppose.
There's a lot of we'll get into that.
Like I wanted.
There's a lot of that to get into.
Yes.
So on that note, things that we're going to get into includes chapters 42 and 47, or up to 47 at least. So 42 is the Remembrance of Dreams through to the end of chapter 47, More Tales of the Wheel, and those are the ones we'll cover in almost said next week's episode, but in our next episode.
Yeah. And then after that, I think there's only one more. I think after that, there's two more.
Yeah.
Podcasts.
I think
we're done with book one.
Two more episodes for this book.
Yeah.
Sweet. 12 chapters.
It's flying by, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
I know. I thought it would be I sort of or at least I thought it would feel like it takes a long time because we have these sort of set milestones during the reading of the book where we don't have to stop, but where we have to actually stop and discuss, and it's very regimented. But if anything, it's just given the motivation to just charge ahead because the rate at which we're going, I mean, it's not blinding. COVID-19 has meant that I am not commuting to work anymore. So, as a middle-aged dad, it is sometimes hard to find the time to dedicate to reading and taking notes and stuff. But the pace at which we've been going has been very enjoyable and very manageable.
Well, I forced myself to slow down, and now I'm regretting it because now I've got the books just staring at me there, and I'm like, oh, right, it's 11:13 p.m. What am I going to do now?
Read.
That's all you got to do. I like how we've also taken the term middle-aged dad and made it a source of pride. Middle-aged.
Was it ever not?
Loving it. Middle-aged dad. I use it. I use it in comment sections on Facebook as well. All the groups that I'm in, people say, "Oh, I'm rereading us." Oh, you got to listen to our podcast, Middle-Aged Dads. That's like the advertising point that I use the most.
Well, it's relevant and true.
Indeed.
Okay, so on that pleasant note, I think it's time for us to bid each other a fond farewell until next time. So until next time, gentlemen, I will see you on the internets.
Yes, we'll be there.
We'll be there.
All right. You too. Cheers, everybody.
Chill, man.
Bye.